And looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. Britton here, also known as Some Dude, back with Britton Social Club. Hope everyone is doing well this fine October afternoon. We're already in late October, which is absolutely insane. But what are you gonna do? We're just chilling here. What the hell? What'd I do? Ramsey's a bitch. Anyway, hope everyone's doing well. I am just getting started here, so I'm just gonna might take me a minute to start responding to comments because you know me, I like to promote this as it's starting. So just give me a minute here and I'll just do that real quick. So yeah, here we go there. There we go there. But yes, I am back from Florida. Sorry I didn't do a stream last week. I didn't really have the equipment to pull off a video or a stream by any means because I was in Florida. But I hope you guys are doing well. I'm glad to be back, even though I had a really great time in Florida. It was also super sunny out here, and it kind of sucked coming back here because it's been kind of cold and rainy the last couple days that I've been out and about. So yeah, but I take my lumps. I'm glad to be home. It's always good to be back in Oklahoma. Once again, hope everyone is having a good week. Well, good weekend, I should say. I had a mostly very good weekend. My sports ball team lost, but that's sometimes that happens. Won't be ranty like the last episode because wasn't that bad of a loss. Could have been worse, but I'm still disappointed. So you know how it is. Oklahoma Sooners. Days of our Sooners. We're gonna have 2 episodes out this week for anyone who's interested. Gonna be Tuesday and Thursday, so should be fun. I'm looking forward to all the stuff that'll be happening this week because there is a lot of stuff that'll be happening this week. I'm gonna be hopefully recording my 150th episode of Britton's Hangout Hour. I have a special guest for that one. Very much looking forward to that. And yeah, so basically it's just been content all week. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it though, because I enjoy doing this stuff. And as always with this show, invite is open as they usually is. Hello, Amanda. How you doing? Let me just. Oh, I didn't. You're not. Oh no, what am I doing? Don't want to spam. Don't want to get kicked out. So yeah, that's always fun. Oh, what's this? Oh, announcements. That's where it's at. There we go. And so let me just. What am I doing for Halloween? Well, I have a video I hopefully will be putting up, but aside from that, what I'm personally going to be doing, I'm not entirely sure. Probably just going to be hanging out at home. Well, I'm also probably going to be doing some stuff for my job. So, that's going to be fun, right? Working on Halloween, the bastards. But I digress. Well, unless they have a game canceled that week, but we'll see. Anyway, someone's in here, guest, a usual suspect in the Britton Social Club, and that is Raph. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, how are you doing, man? The
I'm
most
doing pretty good.
antisocial person to show up in a social club. That's always me.
Well, it's the It's the principle of the social club that I'm
I
going
guess.
for here. No, but
Well,
yeah, I've just been basically just been filibustering for the past 5 to 10 minutes about what I'm hopefully gonna be doing this week on the channel because
yeah, you
it's
were
been a
in
week.
like off in Florida and didn't do anything. I mean, obviously you did
No.
like family stuff, but not video
Yes.
stuff. Anyway, cheers, my friend.
Yes, very much so. Let me. Did I drop the link for the invite? No, I
I
did
was
not.
I was kind of surprised. Well, not surprised, but like we talked about it yesterday during my live stream. The fact that we did like change to like the winter time from yesterday to today, and you obviously didn't. So suddenly we're like 1 hour earlier than usual for me, which is nice because it's not as late.
I honestly don't love the time changes, but
Oh
it's
no, me neither. But right now I'm benefiting from it.
Otharnal. Yeah, we got a couple people got Ben in here. We have Amanda's here.
Hey, band.
I mean, I'm sure it'll be fun. I like working at the radio station. It's just kind of probably just gonna be sitting there most of the night doing the radio stuff. But I think I got it. All right, so let me just move this over here and over there. There we go. And Ori's here. I saw you shared something on my Discord server about it was about From Hell. Yeah, I work on the soundboard for a college, or not college, for a high school football. I control the music and commercials and stuff while the guy talks, or
Neat.
after the guy talks. When he goes on commercial, I am the one who turns on and off the commercials. So yeah, that's what I do.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, no, I was talking on my podcast a few weeks ago with one of my friends and talking about it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, so you like make tricycles as well?" I'm like, "Yeah, screw you." He's like, "Fuck you." But yeah, no. I've also been pretty productive reading wise. I've completed most of the books I've wanted to read for my just horror-a-thon that I like to do. I'm reading Killer on the Road right now. I finished The Babysitter Lives last night by Stephen Graham Jones. A lot of fun, though it does get a little screwy. Killer on the Road's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying that. So yeah, it's been kind of hectic. Raph, you said you got a lot of books done yesterday. I didn't get a chance to catch like the first 30 minutes of your podcast because I was busy watching sports ball.
Yeah, no. I did finish Kirinya by Ian MacDonald, and then I read Tendaleo's story also by Ian MacDonald, which is only a novella, so it is much shorter, and you can get through that in like one day because it's not that long. It's like 100 pages or something like that. Both excellent books because it's Ian MacDonald, and he's always excellent, so that should not be a big surprise.
Yeah, he's one of those authors that you've turned me on to. I just haven't gotten around to reading him yet. I am going to try and read more science fiction in 2026. So maybe I can sneak Ian MacDonald in on that.
But he's certainly got a very broad sort of like spectrum of different styles of books. So you'll be sure to find something in there.
Ori asks, "How did you decide which side to read for?" I actually decided I was actually just going to read Killer on the Road, just that at first because it's a reference to one of my favorite songs from The Doors, "Riders on the Storm." Much to my edification, one of the lines from the song is the epigraph to that story, which is pretty cool. But I was just gonna read that, but I'm like, I have enough time. I think I can read both books, so I decided to just read both of them, and it's been good. Both of them are fun. I think I like Killer on the Road a lot more than The Babysitter Lives, because The Babysitter Lives gets really surreal. It starts out pretty like there's a lot of just like tension, and it just gets pretty wild. It's kind of a haunted house type of story.
Yeah. And today I did finish Cyber Selfish by Paulina Borsuk, which is
Dimitri.
funny book.
Which book?
Cyber Selfish. It has a complex subtitle, but it's about libertarianism in Silicon Valley. It's from 2000, so it gives you sort of like a snapshot of like 90s and mostly 90s Silicon Valley sort of like culture, and it's interesting to compare that to date. She's also like a very, very snarky writer, which makes it highly entertaining.
That's always fun.
Yeah, and it has like a Thomas Pynchon reference, so I'm
Well,
happy.
good luck with finding your copy, Demidrek. The Scar is a very good book. I'm actually wanting to reread that book myself because, it's one that I made a book called Books That Have Consumed Me a few weeks ago, and that's one of the books that have definitely done that. Hello, so how you doing? Isn't Charlie Strauss that guy who writes about like that Eldritch mailroom or whatever that is, whatever that's called?
He writes
It's
the Laundry Files, yes.
the Laundry Files. That's it. I don't know why I thought it was a mailroom.
No, Laundry Files is, as far as I can tell, it's British. It's basically Scotland Yard's Cthulhu hunting department, I guess, or something like that. I haven't read it yet. That's what I've been told.
Oh, same. I haven't read it either, so I don't know. My friend Alan has, and he really enjoys them. So there is a mailroom in the building. Okay, well, I wasn't far off. Man, yeah, no,
Well, I
I've
mean,
been.
like a 4-hour nap sounds like the kind of thing that your body really needed. I mean, obviously, you've been traveling recently and had like the medical stuff, so yeah, makes sense.
I
So yeah, I did.
also. Oh,
I did finish that, and now I am currently reading A World Without Work by Daniel Suskind, which is more economic history and stuff.
reading a lot of that recently.
Yeah, it's still part of like the whole AI, artificial intelligence video that I'm kind of working on, and one of the key points is that artificial intelligence is just another automation technology. So when we talk about what it does and how it's used, it makes more sense to look at automation technology and the history of automation than think about like the weirdness of like supposed super intelligence or anything of the sorts. And for that, you got to read economic history, whether you want to or not.
Yeah, it's it's. I've tried reading some economic books. And they tend to be quite dry. Though I did enjoy Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. I thought that was pretty simple in comparison to other books. Like I tried reading like Das Kapital years ago, and I just was like, this is just dreadfully boring.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in that regard in particular, which is of
At
course,
least like the Communist Manifesto is like,
yeah, but that's the point. Is
punchier.
like the Communist Manifesto is a political manifesto that's written for the Communist Party. That's supposed to, address workers that can read but don't have like any academic background, and that's supposed to, make them understand why being a communist is a good idea, right? That's
Yeah, it's a
that's a
polemic.
political manifesto. Yeah, it's a political manifesto. That's kind of the point. And Capital is that's an academic work. That's that's kind of the point. And obviously it's
And that's
also
not
like
me
100.
just saying that because I like disagree with communism or whatever. It's a dry read. it's really dry.
Okay, like, but one point is
Maybe I'll try it again at some point.
Capital is not a book about communism. I don't even think the word communism is mentioned once in the entirety of Capital.
I think it's more of an economics book, if I
Yeah,
remember
that's the
right.
point. That's the point. It's a look at how capitalism works, what it does that is good, what it does that is bad, and where the problems lie. And that's what it is. And yeah, that is kind of dry. That's kind of the point of economics, right? In a
Yeah,
lot of
no,
ways.
it's like I took an economics class when I was in college, and I was kind of looking forward to it because I thought we were gonna like talk about like theories and whatnot. It was not. We did like a bunch of math. It was painful. That was a painful class to get through, but I did it. We're all good, you know. I'm still here, you know. No, I'm still in college. I will be probably graduating in December, so I just need to actually. I've been getting emails about setting up my getting my gown and whatnot, which, but whatever. I don't really want to go to a graduation ceremony, but you're gonna be graduating college. That's a big thing, so.
Yeah. Yeah, but, Ori, I know about the talking to my daughter about the economy. I haven't read that one. My flatmate has read it, and I think he enjoyed it. So there's that. But yeah, like, no, Capital, I think, is interesting also that it reads really hard because it's like a 150-year-old book. It reads hard because of it, the language and everything has changed. It's like the same way that reading Jane Austen nowadays feels different because, it's a 150-year-old book. So there's that. I think what helps with Capital in particular is reading it alongside like introductory lessons, lectures, or whatever, going through that, having like examples that connect it to contemporary, economy problems and so forth, versus, just reading a text that is all about like how children are killed in factories, which you get in Capital in detail. But it's probably not a good starting point, the same way that starting an introduction into economics by reading The Wealth of Nations is also going to be like a very, very dry and disappointing kind of situation.
Yeah, no, it's God, yeah, I think I read the Communist Manifesto. My uncle owned it, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I ended up reading it, and I'm like, oh, okay, this.
No, it is a very, very good sort of like analysis of both the flaws and benefits of capitalism, because capital is not polemic in any way, shape, or form. It certainly shows how the system works, and in that regard, it is still very good. It does some really interesting things. Obviously, the labor theory of like of value is like an important element there. There's good stuff in there that non-Marxist economists also benefit from and read. I mean, a lot of economists read Marx, even if they're not, politically left or by any means, because it's just such an important text in that specific area.
Yeah,
But it's not like an
it's a very
introduction.
influential book for better or for
Yeah,
worse.
yeah, that's the point. But it's not necessarily, a good introduction to economics by any measures, right? Like, but what I'm reading right now is like more economic history, which is more like, hey, and then we did this and this happened, and with a focus on labor and capital and stuff like that. But it doesn't involve like all the maths that economists use to pretend that they're doing science, which they're not.
I haven't read The Dagger and the Coin. I've heard it's kind of it kind of makes me think of something like when I hear that I always think of something like Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. I'm like, oh, Leiber's not a bad person to rip off. I don't think he gets ripped off enough. Maybe rip off is a bad word, but is a bad word for it. But like emulation, I think is better.
I still have to read Dagger and Coin. I haven't read it, and I haven't read Neptune's Brood, but a very interesting sort of like Fafhrd and Grey Mouser-ish, or also Jack Vance-ish fantasy that came later is Michael Shea's Niftalene stories. If you haven't read those, they are
I haven't read those.
Incredibly fun.
Mention Gentleman on the Road. I'm like, I have read that, and I had a lot of fun with it. I want to read it again, actually.
Yeah, Gentleman of the Road is just like really, really fun, and Niftalene
really
is more fantastic.
It's not fantastical, but it's a sword and sorcery story.
It very much is, yeah. And there's a lot of like Fafhrd and Grey Mouser stories where there's like no magic happening at all, so it kind of works that way. No, Niftalene is more magical. What is really funny about the Niftalene stories is that they're always told by someone else about Nift, and he's telling you the adventures of Nift. And there's a lot of like side comments on like which of like the narrations can be trusted and where like. It's like, yeah, I got told this part by this person, but you have to take this with a grain of salt because this person is obviously a known liar. So I have to just assume that this happened in a different way and so forth. It's really, really funny in that sort of like meta.
So it's kind of like a history in that way.
Yeah, it has like this meta sort of like narrative kind of levels in there that make for a lot of fun in that weird way. If you enjoy someone poking fun at like fantasy while telling you a fantasy story and so forth.
Yeah, I actually want to reread Gentlemen on the Road at some point because I don't know if I gave it the appreciation or or I should say the time that I feel it deserved at the time when
I
I
mean,
read it.
I think it might be worth your time if you have read some Fafhrd and Grey Mouser before rereading Gentlemen of the Road.
Yeah, I might need to do
Then,
that as well because I've been wanting to reread Far from the Grey Mouser for a few years. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a bunch of other books to read, and it's like,
There's always books to read. That's kind of the problem. They just don't stop writing, the fuckers. It's really bad. Someone should do something about that.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, finally I have some time. And they're like, oh, another book. It's just the other day I was watching a video from a friend of mine. He's like, all right, I'm going to stop buying books for a while and read some of these other books I have. And I'm like, that's probably a good idea. I should probably do that.
Yeah, it's one of those things I've been thinking about a lot recently because YouTube keeps recommending videos to me about like, oh no, people are buying too many books and there's overconsumption and is book talk like fast fashion and stuff like that, and it kind of annoys me, but it also sort of me thinking about how I buy books, but also earlier, like obviously I've spent a lot of time when I still had a bit more like income or a bit more money to spend than right now when I'm very broke. I spent a lot of money on records, and in like the heavy metal scene, at least in parts of the heavy metal scene, like buying records has the same, is done in the same way, with like people being like very performative, like, oh no, I clearly have a record buying problem. I need to stop buying so many records and so forth. And so it's interesting for me to see how we engage with that. And one thing I found so fascinating is that with music, sort of the idea is that you listen to something again and again and again, right? Like you buy a record and you listen to it 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, whatever, right? Whereas with books, a lot of people buy books and read the book once and put it in the shelf, and that's it. And like a couple of years later, they unhaul it. But we don't reread as much as we re-listen. Obviously, partly that's because, books are much longer. Like an album takes like an hour to listen to, and a book takes like 4 to 50 hours to read. So I understand that you can't necessarily reread something as often, but the idea that you read something once and that's it, I find really fascinating.
Yeah, it's commercialism, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, it's like I'll be reading something, I'll be like, oh, this Thomas Pynchon guy, and I'm like, oh, what's that over there? It's
Yeah.
I don't get it. I've only read the one Thomas Pynchon. I'm hoping after I complete some of the books I'm going to be starting in November. Hopefully, I'll get to Vineland before the end of the year because I wanted to read it after watching one battle after another.
Yeah. What are you planning to read in November?
Well, hold on. For one, I'm hoping to finish A Brief History, 7 Killings. I have about 100 pages or so left of that book, so I'm going to finish that up.
That is a thick book, though.
It is. It's taken me about 3 months to read it. So I mean, it's Marlon James. That's kind of a given. He's not he doesn't make it easy on his audience. I'll just say that. But let me
that is true.
Some books I'm hoping to read. I'm hoping to read after that. I'm hoping to start Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov. That's probably gonna take the rest of the year to finish all that. Also hoping to start. I'm actually doing this as a buddy read with some friends of mine. Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson. It's a book I've wanted to read Dennis Johnson for many years now. I just haven't gotten around to him yet. Heard him be compared to like Cormac McCarthy. I'm like, oh well, I'll always read something that's like Cormac McCarthy. I'll read
Dennis Johnson. I haven't read any Dennis Johnson, but he also got mentioned in Cyber Selfish.
Oh, he did.
Oh yeah, as I said, like Thomas Pynchon got a reference. Dennis Johnson got a reference. It's very much that kind of book where someone who comes from like a sort of like philosophy, literature, liberal arts kind of background, but then ends up in tech journalism for 20 years, talks about their experience with tech bros in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, no, fucking tech bros. They're always ruining everything. Also, the movie came out, and it's also really short. It's like 116 pages. So I'm like, I can
Yeah.
knock this out in 2 days. Also, She Rides Shotgun by Jordan Harper. This is a crime novel.
Okay.
It's my first Jordan Harper. I've heard a lot about this guy. So I was gonna start him next year with a book called Everybody Knows, which I'm still gonna do. But She Rides Shotgun came out as a movie. So I'm like, well, I'll check it out. It's not very long. I could probably knock it out, without too much hassle. So yeah. So that's kind
Yeah.
of
Okay.
there's
That
some
sounds
other
good.
books I'll hope to get to, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And then probably Vineland if I can
Violent is
get in
fun.
there. I've heard it's really dark.
Technically,
I
all
watched this
Thomas Pynchon
guy.
books are dark.
I was about to say I watched this guy called God. His name's Matthias. He runs a channel where he talks about like he does talk about fantasy sometimes, but he mostly talks about like literary fiction. Like Michael Chabon and Jonathan Lethem and Thomas Pynchon and guys like that. He actually just recently did a review for Shadow Ticket. I think he's called The Book Club. Actually, let me find this. It's gonna drive me crazy until I know it. But anyway,
I've watched a couple. I've watched a couple of Shadow Ticket reviews, but I don't think I've watched that one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on, Pynchon.
Never mind.
But he did a review of Vineland. He's like, oh, it's actually a real dark book. A lot of people say it's like really lighthearted. The Book Chemist is his name.
The Book Chemist. Okay, then I haven't watched it yet. I've seen it show up in my recommendations. I just haven't had time to watch it yet. I think all Thomas Pynchon books are actually really dark. It's just easy to forget that because of all the ridiculousness that kind of is like sprinkled over it. But there's always a very dark sort of undertone in what Pynchon does, because it's always about how sort of in inflection points in history, sort of like the system always wins, like the man always wins, and that is always a dark and depressing sort of end. And you see that with the one that we talked about, Inherent Vice, which is all about sort of the end of the hippie sort of times and Nixon taking over.
It kind of reminded me a little bit. I don't know if you've read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but Inherent Vice
A
kind of
long
reminded
time
me a
ago.
little bit of that
I
because
mean, it's
they're
obviously
both
it is the same
well,
sort of like
they're both about kind of the corrosion of the hippie movement and how it kind of got hijacked by commercialism. So
yeah,
that checks out.
yeah. Thornhill, The Expanse is fun. The last book and ending of the series sucked, in my opinion. I did not like where it ended, but it is certainly very, very readable and has some cool ideas. So at least the first book is really fun.
I'm always so picky with sci-fi because like there's the what I like to call popcorn science fiction. So
The
like
Expanse is
Michael
very much that.
Crichton and Andy Weir to an extent does this. Even though I like The Martian, I think The Martian is a good book.
I haven't read it.
I haven't read Project Hail Mary. I'm hoping actually to do that in 2026 because again, I'm hoping to catch up with a lot of science fiction. But Ready Player One, which is probably the worst example of that kind of science fiction. I generally don't care for that kind of science fiction, but
I haven't read any of those because I already know I'm gonna hate them. Like I don't need to read Ready Player One to know that it's not the kind of book that I'm interested in. And with Michael
it's
Crichton,
not worth it. I personally don't think it's worth it because
I think
it's
what Ready Player One did.
I did
was
appreciate the
obviously
Rush references as I got older because I like Rush, but
Yeah, but who doesn't? What
that's
are your
true.
thoughts on like the reunion thing and the shows next year?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're happy to know the drummer is German. I mean, I was kind of skeptical, but I've seen some videos of the
She's an
lady
amazing
drumming,
drummer.
and she's very good. Yes, and I'm like, you know what? I think they'll be okay. Just I hope they don't put out any new albums. I don't think they will, but that would.
Nah, I don't think they will either. That doesn't feel like the kind of thing they would do.
It wouldn't feel
I doubt
right,
it.
because Neil's gone.
Yeah, exactly. And no, I've been listening to a lot of Rush recently because of that and of the announcement. I was like, holy shit, that's. I just hope that they actually, if the shows go well, and at least obviously the demand is there. I just hope that they also come to Europe again, because I would like to see them again.
Yeah, they're a
Um,
good band. I actually, my friend Will gave me a video of a couple of people,
mm,
um, like Tool and I think the drummer from Tool and
yeah.
Primus, Les
Mm,
Claypool, and some other people. They did a pretty cool cover of Anthem, which is a lot of fun.
yeah. Les
Who
Claypool is
knew?
such an amazingly insane guy.
Yeah, he did the. I always forget he's the guy who did the theme for South
For
Park.
South Park, yeah.
Yeah, no, he's
I
I've
mean,
wanted to read Rendezvous with Rama for many years. I just
yeah,
haven't gotten around to it.
it's a good book. It's not perfect by any means, but it certainly had a huge impact on science fiction and on just on big tech and a lot of on like tech entrepreneurs as well. So it's definitely the kind of book that once you've read it, you will understand other things better. That kind of book.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it is. I mean, I love Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. I think that's a
Oh yeah, yeah,
really good book.
it's a really fun one in a lot of
Probably
ways.
my favorite take on the alien invasion story for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of like transhumanist thoughts in there, and I think that's kind of part of the thing that makes Clark so influential when we talk about contemporary, current sort of like high tech Silicon Valley kind of people. How because a lot of them grew up on reading Arthur C. Clarke, and the idea of like transhumanism is sort of built in that. It's like we can become more than what we are right now, and that's something that Clark obviously plays with in Rendezvous with the Rama, and especially in Childhood's End, obviously.
Oh, for sure. I also appreciate that it's not like an evil alien invasion. It's just like us being our usual paranoid, suspicious selves, end up
Yeah,
screwing everything up. Which I'm like that feels more authentic to me. Well, I mean,
yeah,
no, I think an alien invasion can happen, and they're all hostile, War of the World style. But you know,
yeah, yeah, maybe. Um, so no, okay. I said like I haven't read like Ready Player One. It felt more like, hey, let's 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 jerk ourselves off about our memories of like 80s cartoons and video games and
I mean
pretend
that's
that we could
basically what
actually
it
be
is. So
cool.
you're not far
Yeah,
off there.
yeah. There is something in there that I think is deeply troubling in a lot of ways, but I haven't read it, and unless I want to talk about more about that larger project, I will not go and read it. Michael
Also,
Crichton, nah.
I also find that something like The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, I remember when I read that, I'm like, God, this is what Ready Player One should have been. It should have been like an exploration of like why people are drawn to escapism. Because like Ernest Cline like tries to do that, but then it just kind of goes off into what you said. He's jerking himself off over all the stuff
Yeah,
he liked when he was a kid.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there is that thing that like Michael Chabon comes from like a different sort of approach to writing and thinking about stuff, and Ernest Cline, from what I can tell,
What's up, Joe?
did only write weird incel poetry before that.
What? I know he wrote poetry. I didn't know it was incel poetry. That's kind of weird.
There's a video by, I think it might be Jenny Nicholson, one of those video essayists that do like culture stuff.
Oh, she's always fun. I enjoy
And
her.
I think
I
she did a
enjoyed her
video
Star
on Ready
Wars
Player
stuff.
One, and she might be the one who actually does read some of his poetry, and it's pretty bad.
I should note that that's not really saying much. I don't really think too much of contemporary poetry, though. I have gained some more appreciation for it because I've been taking some poetry classes recently, and I've the guy who teaches it is also a poet, and he's very passionate about it. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I am being a little bit of a snob, but I really don't like the like spoken word, snapping fingers crap. Like I generally hate that
Mm,
stuff.
yeah. Hey Joe, how you doing? Cool that you finished an edit. For which book did you finish that edit? um, the poetry, I think, is interesting in that it does have all these weird rules that you kind of need to understand to appreciate it, and to also go and break it, because so much of poetry is about like breaking those rules at the same time, and it's just like such a highly stylized art in the same way that like jazz is, right? Poetry is a bit like
Mhm.
jazz with words. I think it's you
I
need to
actually
sort of
like
understand
poetry more than
what.
because I love jazz. Prey of Angels is what Joe says. Hybrid
Okay.
Helix 8.
Okay.
How many books are there in the series that you've put out so far, Joe?
Well, 7.
Oh,
He's
7?
working on 8.
Well, and you're giving it
um,
away. Yeah, no, I'm just kind of, I don't know. I just, like I said, I'm not really a big fan of the like snapping fingers, crap. Well, I mean, the only exception I'll make is uh Shane Koyazan, who is a Canadian spoken word poet. He's
mhm.
very, very good. I love most of the stuff I've seen from him, but I mean, I don't really have anything against poetry. I like a lot of older poetry, like William Blake and William Wordsworth, and
Blake is fascinating in his weirdness.
well, yeah, I like Blake because he's weird. I'll admit I'm more of a fan of his art than his poetry. I do love his poetry, but I like his art
Yeah.
as well. I'm more into his art because it's like, oh man, like I might dare say it's biblical.
That is a
25.
really funny joke there, a comment there, Ori, about the most helical
I
digit.
don't know if I get that joke, unfortunately.
You need to look at the way that the number 8 looks, and then you understand why it looks like a helix.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, you were bringing up Thomas Pynchon being kind of dark, even though he's kind of silly. I've kind of gotten a similar vibe from like my readings of Terry Pratchett. I mean, I don't think like the world of Discworld is like grim dark or anything, but it does get it does get pretty dark at points. He doesn't shy away from kind
Yeah.
of being like, damn, life's unfair sometimes.
The thing is, there are some parallels in Pynchon and Pratchett in a lot of ways. Like on the one hand, there's the penchant for like ridiculous names.
Oh yeah.
Pratchett
What
sure
what
loves himself some ridiculous names as well.
Oh God, what's the one guy's name? It's called Bloody Stupid Johnson, I think.
Yeah, yeah, bloody stupid
Or
Johnson.
or like Dibbler something. I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know.
cutting my own throat, Dibbler.
Yeah, cutting me own throat, Dibbler. Yeah, I'm just like, what? I kind of
Um,
view Pynchon kind of like Philip K. Dick, just for some reason Pynchon, got more respect.
there
Um
are certain parallels there as well, and there's like in Shadow
and
Ticket,
also
there's
they
this.
like weird names too. That's
Yeah,
kind of one I always they love the weird
yeah,
names.
yeah. Obviously, I mean, Pynchon and Dick came up during the same sort of time, like which is 60s and 70s, and paranoia is like a big deal for both authors, and drugs certainly play a role in. Well, in Dick's life, I have no idea about like drug habits of Thomas Pynchon, but they certainly play a role in his books in a lot of ways. So there's parallels there. Now, but like this one thing, like this one quote, like example thing in Shadow Ticket, where Pynchon writes like the kind of homework no self-respecting dog would deign to eat. And
Oh
that's a
no.
sentence, and that's a sentence you could also find in a Terry Pratchett book, exactly the same way. Like that sort of like image.
I mean, the more I've read Discworld, the more I get kind of sad that Terry Pratchett passed away. Because I'm like, man, he's really good. Alzheimer's a bitch, man. Or Alzheimer's is a bitch, man. Like, really is.
Yeah.
I do hear his City Watch books get like more dark, which I'm like, oh boy.
They
I'm
get
curious.
very dark. Like the darkest one is Night Watch. That is a really, really dark one.
Yeah, a lot of people say that's the best one of the City Watch books. Or a lot of
I
people
don't.
I've known who really like the City Watch books anyway.
I mean, I really like it, but it is the darkest Discworld novel in general. And I sometimes feel that a lot of people like it because it is, in that regard, the least Pratchetty one. And a lot of people who like epic fantasy and so forth still feel somewhat uncomfortable with Pratchett's sort of levity and puns and stuff, I think. And that one is probably the most straightforward, like angry fantasy. So it it will appeal to people that
Also,
have
holy
like trouble
shit,
with like the
jokes.
more ridiculous stuff.
25? Good luck, man. That's a lot of freaking books. He's really going for the magnum opus thing. But Ori says Vimes literally fights darkness. Curious to see how this goes. Yeah, no, it's.
My dad about my business.
Oh well, okay, that's nice. Oh, in Thud. Okay, well, isn't that the one where he time travels? Because I heard there's one where
That is
Vime time
Nightwatch.
travels.
Nightwatch is the one where he time travels. Thud is dealing a lot with racism and the war between dwarves and trolls and stuff like that.
Oh, that I bet that's not gonna be cheerful at all. Yeah.
Oh, it's still a very good one. It has a really interesting plot. It does some fun things with the Battle of Coombe Valley and things like that. There's good stuff in there, for sure.
Yeah, it's I mean, again, I've only read the two, which guards and men at arms, and we'll see if I can sneak in another one before the end of the year, but I find that very doubtful. But but yeah, I've been enjoying my stays in Discworld. They're really, I mean, the Discworld Files is the thing. If you guys want to go watch that. I did put out a poll recently about which sub-series we should do next, and overwhelmingly people said Death. So, which I was kind of leaning on anyway, because Death was the one I really wanted to start first, but people were like, no, Britton, you should start with City Watch or Rentswold. And I'm like, all right, I'll start with City Watch because it sounds more interesting to me. Also, I hear Color of Magic is real rough, but that's another one I want to sneak in before too long. Is the Color of Magic and the Light Fantastic, because Raph told me they're kind of very closely together.
They are basically one story in a lot of ways, and they feel literal cliffhanger between them.
Oh, no. Is it literally end with them hanging off a cliff?
I won't spoil anything.
Okay.
But it does have some really interesting things. It also introduces Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah, no, I've heard one of the best ones, and Derry's always telling me about the short film they made called Troll Bridge. There's another one that might turn into like a mini episode. I might just read all the short stories, but we'll see. I'll have to find them somewhere. I'm sure there's PDFs somewhere.
Troll Bridge is on YouTube. You can just watch it on YouTube, I think.
No, I know that. I just mean like reading the actual story.
Yeah, but that's short story. I don't remember in which collection you can find Troll Bridge. It might be in one of the legends, the ones edited by possibly Robert Silverberg. It's in one of those collections of stories, so it's kind of difficult to find.
Yeah, Rent's Wind. Sorry, I get it mixed up.
Okay, if it's free to, I didn't know that. I got it in like a collection somewhere, but I didn't know it was also free to read online. So in that regard, I mean, it's a short story, so.
My friend Josh, who I'm actually hoping to have on the Discworld Files somewhere in the near future.
Which Josh is that?
His name's Josh Pantelresco. You haven't met him. I doubt you've met him. He actually edited my book that I wrote, actually. But
okay, so he's not a YouTube person.
No. He's not.
Okay,
he's not
in that case, because there's like 2 or 3 Josh on
I was about to say, yeah, there's a couple
YouTube,
of Joshes on BookTube. No, he's not a BookTuber.
Yeah, and he's like,
but,
when you say my friend Josh, I'm like, oh, which one is it? Okay, it's
no, but he's like, you're gonna think it's a step down. I'm like, well, let me see. All right, let me just see, and I'll let you know. But yeah, though he's also been busy traveling around the North America, so he's been doing that.
Nice.
Said he's heading to Mexico soon.
Oh.
So hopefully that'll work out, and he doesn't get hurt. But he seems to be doing okay so far.
Yeah. Okay. So they now collected in blink of the screen. I haven't gotten that one yet. I should probably do that. I think I got it from Legends 1 or 2. I think it was in one of those. Or that one?
Oh.
I don't know.
That's kind of weird. It's a Cohen the Barbarian. Do you think Terry just did that to be a troll?
I mean, obviously, it's a joke on Conan, very explicitly.
No, I know, but it's like it was originally written for After the King's Stories in honor of J.R.R. Tolkien, and Cohen is based off a character by Robert E. Howard, who's the other guy.
I mean, there are like letters from J.R.R. Tolkien where he wrote about reading some of the Conan stories and liking them. So I don't think Tolkien. It's not a big insult to Tolkien. The weird
No,
rivalry
I mean,
between Conan and between Lord of the Rings and Conan, or like Howard and Tolkien, is something that came after that. Tolkien liked Conan, Robert E. Howard. It was probably not like didn't think it's like the best thing ever written, but he said like he really enjoyed reading Conan stories. So there's that.
wasn't like Dune where he wrote in a letter, I disliked it immensely. Which caused a bunch of nerds to speculate on why that's the case.
The Silver Horde is definitely no joke. Teach being probably the most frightening one.
Yeah, it was kind of a reason I was kind of hesitant with This World of First, because I'm like, oh well, Cohen the Barbarian, come on now. But I was won over by the City Watch. I'm enjoying that a lot. So
Conan the Barbarian is the Discworld's greatest hero.
Yeah.
That is literally like what he's called. The concept of Conan is just really fascinating because Conan is the Discworld's greatest hero, but because he is so good at being a hero, he just never died. So when you meet him, he's very, very old. Because
Yeah, and like it's like that's like this kind of like grumpy old man, basically. Well, I've only
he's still a barbarian hero.
No, I mean Death, not Cohen. I haven't met Cohen yet.
Yeah.
Unless he shows up in some of the later books I hope to read, which, maybe.
He does not show up in any of the City Watch books per se. He shows up in The Last Hero, which has some City Watch stuff in it, but that's like more like a graphic novel kind of thing.
Oh.
Not sure if they included it in like the recent like sort of like collected works of Pratt, because it was like really hard to find. It's certainly not part of the current like audiobook re-releases, so I have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah, I've heard the newer audiobooks are really good. I know Derry really likes them.
That's good. I mean, I've listened to some of them. What's interesting there is that they have like multiple narrators, and have always Peter Serafinovich to do the voice of Death, who obviously shows up in every book, so that's fun. And they're doing like a lot of interesting stuff there. It's the usual thing. I grew up with the older Discworld audiobooks, so I have emotional attachment to those.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, don't you like Isn't Christopher Lee the one who plays Death in the old audiobooks, or is that somewhere else?
That's somewhere else. The old books are narrated by most of them by what's his name. So they switch at some point between narrators, and the witch books have a different narrator as well. So it's Michael. Oh, it's not Michael Page. What's his name? I'm blanking on the names right now. But those are the older narrators.
I've seen some of the old covers. They look pretty good, though. They kind of remind me of like Michael Whalen, which that might be intentional because Michael Whalen's a pretty well-known illustrator in the SFF community. But yeah, yeah, no, it's yeah, I like that. Terry isn't afraid to get serious without getting like over dark, uberly dark. Though I hear he gets darker.
Yeah, there's the thing going on there, and I'm always careful with that kind of stuff because it does sort of go into the whole like death of the author kind of thing, quite literally in this regard, where Pratchett does get more direct in his messages in the later books, especially after the diagnosis, his Alzheimer's diagnosis. And there's always the questions like, is he trying to hammer home his message more clearly because he knows he doesn't have as much time? Or is that something that I'm reading into those books with me knowing? Well, me quite literally at the time, I was obviously reading Discworld when those books came out, and he made that
Not
first.
that I've read. I don't think there's been anyone threatening rape, and I don't think there's anyone who's even mentioned the word rape in in Terry Pratchett's Discworld books, unless it does later on, and I don't know about it. And, you can neither confirm or deny. That's nice, Joe. Very thoughtful. Please don't get a terminal diagnosis. We need you in the world, Joe.
That is true, Thonal. He can throw a 7 with the 6-face dice.
Yeah, he's something else.
But here's the thing, Ori. There exists an audiobook of The Last Hero. It's just no longer available anywhere except for, on YouTube. I think it might still be on YouTube. Let me check. It used to be on YouTube. It was done by the ISIS audiobook guys who did all of those old ones, some of which I still have in those massive plastic boxes.
Which, like, I mean, I don't want to say there's, you know what? I won't say that, but I will say, like, I'm not against depicting sexual assault in fiction, but I generally get kind of irritated when people say portray something tastefully, because I don't really think you can portray something like sexual assault and anything resembling good taste. If you do treat it with the seriousness that it requires, I generally think you can get away with it anyway. I mean, it's better than, I personally will not write about it because that's just something I don't really want to get involved with, like depicting it. But and also there's a lot of authors who do it really badly. So,
It really depends on what you're trying to do. On that subject, I found something, I'll bring it up in a moment. Just quickly, I just checked. Yes, you can still get the audiobook read by Stephen Briggs. It is still on YouTube to find for you. The audiobook for The Last Hero. It exists. So Stephen Briggs is the second main narrator for the old Terry Pratchett audiobooks. The other one is Nigel Planer, who is doing the first part of that. Anyway, on that whole like sexual assault stuff, I found it super weird today.
no.
I watched a video. No, I watched a video. I didn't know what the book was about. I just clicked on the title, which was, it's one of those things that really pisses me off lately with like the clickbaity side of YouTube, where people make titles like, this book really drove me insane, and that's all there is. And then maybe they hold up the cover of the book in the thumbnail, which is obviously not translated from me, so I don't know what they're talking about. And but different problem now. But it was about Nobody's Girl, the Geoffrey, however to pronounce that name, memoir that just came out, Virginia Geoffrey memoir. And the person in in question. It's not an attack. That's why I'm not saying anything there. It's like they were saying, well, I gave it 3 stars, and I just feel that giving star ratings to a memoir of a victim of sexual assault just feels wrong to
Yeah,
me. It's like, like that. It just feels fundamentally wrong. It's like, what are you rating at this point? Are you rating the literary style and skill and technique, or are you rating the experience? Like, you know what I mean? It's like that.
yeah. That's why
You
I
should
always
not
kind
rate
of.
that.
That's always why I'm always kind of like, that's why I'm always kind of like wary when I review nonfiction stuff, because it's like, look, this shit really freaking happened. I can't go like, oh, this book sucks, it's unrealistic, because it freaking happened. I'll share a story kind of revolving around this strange subject we're on in terms of sexual assault and fiction. I read a book last year called My Dark Vanessa, which is a book about um, a
Yeah,
relationship between a teacher and a student. It's kind of playing
yeah.
off of Lolita, the great Vladimir Nabokov novel. I remember really enjoying it. It's a really good book, but I felt that she was a bit too obvious with the fact that
But
um,
isn't My Dark Vanessa based on like her own? Isn't that like half
it is
like
it is
autofiction?
based on her experiences, but it's not like a memoir. Um, but then I did read a memoir, or I read parts of a memoir, where and it was depressing to read, because the teacher in that book, the memoir, does the exact same thing,
Yeah,
and it works.
I remember the big thing where
And
people
I
were
just had to put the
accusing.
book down and
Yeah,
just shake my head and just have my faith in humanity dented again.
wasn't it
So
like the situation that people were accusing the author of My Dark Vanessa of plagiarizing the memoir, or the other way around, and one of them had to come out and go like, no, this is actually what happened to me, so this is not me plagiarizing. It's just like, you know, abusers do that thing.
yeah,
So but yeah, no, as I said, like it's totally fine to write a review and explain your feelings. That the video was all about like their experience with reading uh Nobody's Girl, and how painful it was to read that. But just a sentence of like, I gave it 3 stars, and like putting like a number on like on a memoir, especially on something like this specifically, just feels wrong. It's like, because it's like, what exactly are you rating at this point? You know, which aspect are you rating at this point? It
I'm
just feels
now.
weird.
There are some nonfiction books I'm going to be avoiding. Like, there's a book called The Dark Side of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley's daughter. I'm going to avoid that, because even though she, is totally right to be angry and upset over her abuse, that kind of turned her into a massive homophobe, and I don't really want to. I really don't want to support that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like that book was basically co-written by Vox Day, who is, well, a lot
Yeah,
of
he's Vox
things.
Day. We'll just say that he's
Yeah.
Vox Day. Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, you're right, Thornell. That's kind of the point. Is like, if you're rating a nonfiction book, if you're rating like a memoir, it always feels like you're rating the experience that is portrayed, and nothing else, and that just feels incredibly weird.
Yeah, exactly.
And as I said, like
Yeah,
I
no.
didn't want to name anyone, because it's not about them, that YouTuber, because obviously, if you go on Goodreads, that book has a star rating right now. A lot of people have done this. It just like felt so incongruous to me. It's like, how do you do that?
Yeah, but going back to this, there was that book, and I was just so depressed when I
Yeah,
realized that sometimes these people are genuinely that obvious,
yeah.
And I just had to shake my head and go like, good God, man,
No.
where are we at as a species?
Well, I don't know. Not in a good place, I can tell you that.
This is kind of. Yeah, no, I was kind of mad about that. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'll give it to My Dark Vanessa. They got it right. I kind of thought it was a bit too on the nose, but I
No.
can't say it now. I can't, in good faith, say it now.
No, that's the sad part.
Which again, it's really sad that I have to say that, but I wish it were that, but
mm. Yeah, I'm still somewhat confused. Technically, next week on the 4th of November, the new Black Company novel comes out, and according to the internet at large, there will be an audiobook, which will be narrated by Jonathan Davis, who is
he's good.
Yeah, he narrates.
He did the Kinsey and Gennaro books.
Yeah, he did Book of the New Sun as well, and a lot of other stuff. Snow Crash. No, he's really good. But he also, and this is sort of important, he did the Mergen books in the Black Company series, because Black Company being always like first person narratives by the analyst of the company, switch narrators depending on who's the analyst in the Black Company at that point. And Jonathan Davis is the voice of Mergen in that regard. So all of this makes sense, and it's supposedly coming out and everything.
Really good at
but
portraying those kind of like world weary kind of characters. So
oh,
I think
yeah, definitely. No, he's good at that. But Mark Vitor, who is narrating the ones that the Croker ones, is also really good at his job. Like they're all excellent. But my point is more that the internet claims this book will exist, but every platform I've checked does not have it for pre-order. And I've checked, obviously, Audible.
Damn.
I've checked Everend Script. I've checked Libro FM. It just doesn't. It just doesn't exist anywhere for like actual pre-orders. I'm like, will this actually exist at some point or not? So like, if it comes out, that's definitely my my big November read. And I think The Butcher of the Forest by Primi Mohamed is also coming out in audio in November, or supposed to come out.
Also, Darnell, you should check out The Sisters Brothers. It's a good book. I enjoyed it a lot. Also, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick. So, Raph, keep the masses entertained.
I can do that. So yeah, that's my reading plans for November. If I can get my hands on Lies Weeping and Butcher of the Forest, then I'm going to read those. Otherwise, something else. Possibly going back to Ted Williams. I saw you over there, Demidrack, that you're planning on reading Shadow March. I have not read Shadow March. I have read, obviously, the first part of the Ostenard series, by which I mean Memories of Thorn, those three, and I've read The Heart of What Was Lost. I still have to read The Last King of Ostenard, but I already have all of them. I just need to get to them, and I'm looking forward to that. And I have read Otherland, and I think Otherland sucked. The ending was really bad. Ted Williams is not good at ending books. He's good at like cool descriptions. I like that. His world building is cool. All of that is fun, but he's really not good at finding like actually good endings for stories. It just doesn't work. And Otherland is just incredibly bad at that.
Which author is this?
Ted Williams.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of really good westerns. I mean, I read Blood Meridian, but I don't know if that's the best place to start. Yeah, there's a good couple westerns. Though I'm more familiar with like western movies than like western books, so take my recommendations with a grain of salt.
Yeah, Winnetou is probably not the best source for like correct understandings of the American West.
Yeah, it seemed kind of, I don't want to say pulpy is like a bad thing, because there's a lot of good pulp, but it seemed kind of not good.
Oh, of course. It is a very interesting thing. Now that you're back, I'm gonna get myself another beer. I'll be back in like a minute, and
Yeah,
then we
it's
can
my turn to
talk more
entertain
about
the
this.
masses.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how accurate The Sisters Brothers is to the Wild West, but it's a good book. I really liked it. It's actually more of like a character study, like a more picaresque book than like a more traditional Western. Though if you are curious to learn about some real like Wild West cowboy and shenanigans, Lonesome Dove was really good. And True Grit's very good too. I see you mentioned True Grit. That's a good book. I actually did a discussion of it with my friend Sam a few months ago, and we had a great time. I really enjoyed that discussion. Great dialogue. Probably some of my favorite dialogue in a book. I don't know if it's one of my favorite books because there's some stuff that kind of holds it back for me that doesn't give it the almighty 5-star. But it is a very good book, and I actually read it again this year, and it's very, very good. So it still holds up, I think. Well, I mean, I'm not rush. I don't want to rush you to read Lonesome Dove, but I will say, don't let the length scare you. It's a very it is lengthy, but it moves very fast. So, like if you're not at least interested by the first like 50 to 100 pages, I don't know what to tell you. I'd be very surprised if you're not, taken in. Damn, you're putting out 2 superhero novels in December, Joe? It's crazy, man. I'm looking forward to Raph's discussion about Karl May. This is going to be fun.
All right. One or 2 superhero novels in December. I'll do my best.
I'm also hoping to read The Great Win before the end of the year as well. I don't know when I'm going to do that, though. So, we'll see.
The Great Win was fun. I just, I wonder when the next part will come out.
Next book's coming out in 2026. They actually just announced it recently. So
okay, that's good.
And I feel like a bad Alan Moore fan. I haven't read any of his prose work yet, so we'll see how that goes.
Still have to read Jerusalem, but yeah, I enjoyed The Great Win.
Yeah, I own Jerusalem. It's been staring at me ever since. Like, what are you gonna do? When are you gonna read? Yeah, but
did you watch that conversation he had with Susanna Clark?
I did. Yeah, that was
that was really entertaining.
Yeah, he's always fun to watch. He actually recently recommended Piranesi in a short video he did. He was kind of just thanking his fans. I'm like, you see, he's not a grumpy old man all the time. He's when he's actually passionate about something.
I mean, he also did introductions to the Vor books by Brian Catling.
He did, yeah, he did do that. That's actually what got me to try the Vor was his introduction. Yeah. I'm like, this is glorious.
And the Vor is so fucking weird.
Oh, it is. It is. I've had some friends who bounced off of it, but I dug it when I read it. I have the other 2 books. I just haven't read them yet. I was gonna
read the other 2 as well. There's a lot of more of further weirdness showing up in there, including some William Blake stuff.
I know. I want to read the Erstwhile so bad because it has the Nebuchadnezzar painting that he did, and I'm like, oh my god, I want to read it, please, but I haven't found time.
No, it's really good. But like after reading the Vor, I did very easily understand why why that might be something that Alan Moore would enjoy.
Yeah, he does love he loves William Blake for sure. I mean, Jerusalem is a reference to
of course. But like even beyond that, like when you look at like Alan Moore's like work, the weirdness and so forth of Catling does resonate. Where I'm like, yeah, I can see why someone like Moore would dig that.
Yeah, and also the idea of like art as transcendence, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's something Moore's been ranting about his whole career. It's like Promethea is all about that. I mean, I haven't read all of Promethea, but it is basically about that.
Yeah. No, the Winnetou books are interesting more in what they say about Germany and the German sort of ideas of the West, because they are sort of like supposedly his own adventures that he has there. They are all about like a German migrant arriving in America and making his way through to the West and so forth. And you look at the mid 19th century, a lot of Germans obviously migrated to America at that time. So he does sort of speak, I think, to the experience and thoughts of Germans that remained in Germany, what they imagined, sort of like their friends, family, and so forth that moved, that left, what they might actually experience over there, and giving sort of like voice to that sort of imaginary in a lot of ways. So it's really interesting stuff. You just won't learn anything really realistic about the American West.
Yeah, it was the one thing I kind of had a problem with the Vor. It's like Edward Muybridge makes an appearance in the Vor, and it just kind of is nothing. It doesn't really, except for like a similar theme, but
Yeah.
But Ben asks, has anyone read the Tin Can Society? No, but I've heard of it. I looked it up. Is it the one by hold on, Peter Warren? Because I have heard of it. I'm waiting for it to get in the trade. It sounds like something I would like, but I haven't read it yet.
I have not read those, but then I don't necessarily read comics, so probably not the target audience.
It sucks that you're blind, because I'd be like, bro, check out Transmetropolitan. You would
I
love
know.
that series. I'm like, damn.
I am aware of Transmetropolitan.
Like V for Vendetta, like you would love that book.
My old my former flatmate used to read Transmetropolitan and was very much a fan, and I can tell I would be a fan too.
Yeah, no, it's speaking of Warren Ellis, I actually have one of his books, Gun Machine. I'm hoping to read that in 2026, because again, I'm basically just gonna be I would, I want to. It's always interesting for me when someone who's known for a particular thing, rather it be like music or comics or like an actor or something, writes a novel. I'm always really fascinated with that. Yes, it does have a bowel disruptor, and it's glorious. But it's also really frightening how prescient it's been. Like Warren Ellis and Derek Robertson were on to something when they wrote that. Like,
I think that the sad part, and that's sort of something I learned from reading Cyber Selfish today, is a lot of this stuff feels prescient in what it does, but those things have been there for a long time. So you didn't actually have to do a lot of prescience if you were sort of like plugged into sort of like more underground journalism and stuff like that in the 90s, or you already know where this was going. Like, it's more that it has sort of become harder to ignore nowadays.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Ori. I actually read In the Ass Saw the Angel from Nick Cave a few years ago, and it was a fascinating, bizarre kind of book. It was really, really out there. Very Nick Cave. So, in other words, it should be written on a shirt. It kind of sucks to be blind. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of downsides.
Several things. There used to be like a German comedy kind of group, and they had like a comedy album, and when they sold it on CD, they had on the side in Braille an insult for blind people. So only blind people could read it to be insulted by it, which was I found very good as a concept. When it comes to musical art writers and novels, Neil Peart did write a novel for Clockwork Orange together with Kevin J. Anderson. It is not very good.
I read part of that, and I was liking it. I just didn't get the chance to finish it, unfortunately, because I got real lazy.
I have the audiobook, which was narrated by Neil, so that was really nice.
Oh, that's cool.
Unfortunately, the book wasn't very good, but
Yeah, no, I'm not really a big fan of Kevin J. Anderson, but I mean, it was.
I don't think libertarians make for good novelists.
I like Paul Anderson's pretty good. Or at least I like The Broken Sword anyway.
But Paul Anderson is a different kind of libertarian to what you get today. You know what I mean? I think like Paul Anderson is not yet a post Ayn Randian libertarian, because he's sort of like contemporary to Ayn Rand, so he's not heavily influenced by what Rand is doing. And obviously, I mean, Neil Stephenson is also libertarian, but he also kind of manages to write good books from time to time, so that's good. But I feel like if you put too much sort of like libertarian ideology in your novel, like if you have a libertarian worldview, worlds that you will describe and the conflicts that you will write into your worlds don't necessarily make for really good narratives, because all you can tell is that one good lone wolf millionaire entrepreneur that will defy everyone and win in the end. That's like the only narrative that is built into that world, because that's sort of like the one way of looking at the world that those people have in a lot of ways. And I think that doesn't necessarily make for good storytelling. And I'm saying this not necessarily because I dislike libertarian philosophy or anything of the sorts, although I do have obviously views on that. I just don't think it necessarily makes for good storytelling, the same way that, say, being too set in your ways as a too conservative kind of Marxist would also not necessarily make for good storytelling. And that's sort of like where I see a problem with like someone like Kevin J. Anderson.
I mean, China
Or
Miéville
Peter
is a
F.
good
Hamilton.
writer. He's, I mean, yeah, I
Which one?
mean, China Miéville's a good writer, even though, I don't agree with his politics at all. But he's very good. It's very thoughtful.
Yeah, but
at least when he's
that's-
on form. There's some of his books that have kind of left me cold.
Yeah, but I think the issue, or not issue, with China Miéville is that he is, I mean, he calls himself a Marxist and all of that, but he's not a tanky, you know what I mean?
No. I was
And
about to say I'll give the communist credit here, but tanky seemed like a real fringe belief, even among communists.
Yeah, that is kind of what I mean with, your people like your Terry Goodkind and up to a point Kevin J. Anderson, that they are so rigid in their specific interpretation of liberty. And there are some people who have a very specific, rigid interpretation of Marxist. Usually, when they call themselves Marxist-Leninists, that's kind of when stuff gets very iffy. And those kind of people are also so rigid in their worldview that they don't seem to be willing or able to.
That when it gets mass murdery, like that's
bring in enough sort of like a broader sort of like variation that is necessary for world building and thing is, yeah, that gets boring real fast.
I see what you did there, Joe.
Yeah, Niven and Purnell is a good example there, and I think Purnell is worse than Niven in that regard. But they definitely have that element as well. And I dread the point where I go back and reread Ringworld. I don't necessarily know if I want to do that. I read the Mote in God's Eye, which is one of their collaboration ones, and that's not very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't. I'm like, yeah. I was about to say, yeah. When you're like a Marxist-Leninist, that's when it gets kind of murdery, I think.
No, that's when that's the Stalinist part. Lenin is dead before the whole murdery part gets really big. No, I think the problem is not so much like Lenin wrote some really good stuff, and I think it's important to read Lenin. Stalin, not so much. Stalin is not good it's not interesting as a writer, I would argue, as a philosopher or theoretician. Lenin is worth looking at.
Yeah,
it's more that people.
I was about to say he was more of like I hate to say this, but he like Lenin was kind of the Thomas Jefferson to Joseph Stalin's Alexander Hamilton in a kind of fucked up manner, because I don't really think either of them are.
And Trotsky was Tom Paine in that analogy.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely see Trotsky writing Marxist common sense, like that. Though unfortunately, Stalin was like, I'm gonna get rid of this Trotsky guy. He's a little too crazy, which is kind of what happened to Thomas Paine as well. So that actually fits.
No, but here's the thing: I think you might be onto something there. That's something that came up in Cyber Selfish as well earlier, that I was reading earlier today about specific ways of misunderstanding how the world works, and looking and so forth. And the idea that um, that it's sometimes hard to understand that people who have a very specific sort of political belief can still be nice on a personal level, right? There are ideas of like of a clan member being nice to a civil rights worker, social worker, in because they know each other, and that is sort of the same thing where like someone like Neri Niven probably can be nice to a progressive black author without any problem, but still have awful like politics in general. Unfortunately, there are some texts by Stalin, of course, like that.
Yeah, I
That's like
mean,
one of the things that you need to do if you consider yourself a leftist. At some point, you need to write a piece of theory, whether you are good at writing theory or not. But it's important
I was
to
gonna say
keep that
Stalin.
credibility up.
I don't really think of Stalin as a theorist. He was more interested in what worked, or
Oh, he
well,
was a
what
theorist. He was just not
worked.
like a very he was just not like a very innovative thinker. There are some texts by Stalin. There's a YouTube video, a booktube video that I accidentally clicked on, or not accident, like I clicked on it, and then I realized how bad it was. It's a booktuber trying to do a Marxist analysis of the fifth season by N.K. Jemisin,
Oh God.
and
Oh no.
you can certainly do that, but the one text that she's like, I'm going to do a Marxist analysis and I'll explain what Marxist analysis is, and the one source text she quotes is a text by Stalin, and I'm like, that's not a Marxist analysis. That's a Stalinist analysis of the fifth season, and I don't think that works.
That you know what? I have to watch this just for my own masochistic pleasure at this point. But
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can. I don't know if it's still up. It's been like years since I watched that. Uh, and I didn't actually finish that video because it was too painful. And I'm like, no, look, this is bad. You're giving Marxism a bad name.
there's a lot of things that have given Marxism a bad name, to be honest. No,
That
but,
is unfortunately true because Marxism. I mean, the problem is usually as soon as people call something an ism, it's usually getting bad, especially when it comes to ideology. And with philosophy, that's the same thing. It's like once you sort of like turn something into that it's ism, like it's a mark. If you're Marxism or there's that level, on the other hand, you have like your Jan, like the same thing, like Nietzschean. If you call yourself a Nietzschean philosopher, you're a bad person. That's just like
oh
in
Lord.
there. If you call yourself a Kantian philosopher, you're also a bad person because you're creating a very clear form of orthodoxy, and that's the same thing like with you're a Marxist. It's like,
Ah, Mac. Hope you're enjoying L.A. Confidential, the book, and surprised you've finished it so quickly. It's not a it's not a it's not a it's not a light read, I should say. But sorry, Raph. Continue what you were saying.
now humanism is a different thing. My point is more is if it's the kind of ism or whatever you want to call it that is tied to one specific thinker, and that's sort of like a form of uh yeah, very rigid orthodoxy, very usually that goes, and that's my point. Like humanism, totally fine. Existentialism, totally fine. Although I have issues with both in some places, but also existentialism is a humanism according to that sad guy.
Oh God. I don't want to go on another tirade about Sartre today.
Nah, I'm not a big Sartre fan, but I think his existentialism is humanism is actually a very good essay, and it's only like 3 pages or whatever. So it's definitely, if you want to read Sartre, that's the one to read because it's good. It does explain sort of like the understanding of like 1930s, 40s situation. Yes. You're definitely a bad person if you call yourself a Schopenhauerist.
I was about to say, yeah, Schopenhauer's like, that sounds bleak. Like, he's always like, nothing matters,
Schopenhauer is incredibly fun.
It's very pessimistic, though.
He's very pessimistic, but if you read Schopenhauer, if you're able to read Schopenhauer in German, he's really good at throwing shade. Like he's very good at like same as Nietzsche. Like
Oh, yeah,
he's very
Nietzsche's hilarious. I mean, I don't...
Nietzsche and Schopenhauer would both have been incredibly good on Twitter. Like those are posters. They are really good at insulting others in like very well turned short phrases where they're like, there's a bunch of like really cool like Schopenhauer quotes on Kant where he gets like really angry at Kant in the most genteel way, like ripping him apart. It's ridiculously fun.
Everyone seems to rip on Kant. I mean, like even Ayn Rand disliked Kant quite a bit.
Well, Ayn Rand does not exactly understand philosophy. That's kind of the problem. Kant is incredibly important, and Kant does some good things. Don't get me wrong. He's a massive thinker. He's very, very hard to read in German. His way of writing is just incredibly frustrating. The way he writes massive long sentences, and it's just not a lot of fun. He's not a good writer. He's a very good thinker, just not a very good writer. And that's like the main issue with Kant. And then it kind of depends on which part of like Kantian philosophy you're picking at. Critique of pure reason is definitely a milestone in Western philosophy that is, yeah, it's a big deal.
I like a lot of the like Enlightenment philosophers, like Locke and Hume, and God damn it, is Hobbes considered a? I don't really agree with Hobbes. I think he's a bit of an authoritarian, but I like reading him. He's very interesting. But is he considered Enlightenment?
Yeah, that is very Schopenhauer, what you're quoting there, Thornall. That is just like really good. Yeah, of course, Ayn Rand didn't understand philosophy.
I just don't really gel. I think Rand is a bit too extreme. And kind of what you were saying earlier, she was a bit too rigid in her beliefs.
I think what is interesting with Rand in a lot of ways, and why her writing is still so attractive to a very specific sort of subset of people, mostly young privileged white men who feel that they're not getting the respect they're due, is that her writing is basically radiating entitlement the entire time. And that is, partly because of her history. She famously had to flee the Soviet Union after benefiting from all the stuff that the Soviet Union made accessible to like people with like less money in a lot of ways. And she ended up in the US, but as a migrant, as a Russian migrant, even though she worked in Hollywood as like a script doctor, like script writer and so forth, like she never got any recognition. And that sort of like lack of recognition is something that drives all of her writings. When you read her stuff that she's writing in, say, The Fountainhead, so much of this is sort of like impacted and influenced by her experience as someone in Hollywood who does not get any recognition, fame, acknowledgement, or whatever, but believes that they are actually due all of that. That's why, a lot of like angry teenagers love Ayn Rand, because she does express that feeling so much. And
well, I mean, as I've said, I'm a bit more sympathetic to her criticisms of the Soviet Union. I just think she was a bit too rigid in her beliefs, and ironically enough, became like, and she also just seemed like a very unpleasant person in general. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't have liked her very much. Though I do think it's kind of hilarious that a lot of the other right-wing intellectuals of the time, like Buckley and like Rothbard, were like, we're not dealing with that shit. Like, she's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's the point. It's like, I don't. That's part of the point. There's like, I'm not unsympathetic to her life story. I think the problem is that there has, like, she never had like any form of self-reflection. Like, she had to take like social security numerous times in her life, and she still railed against big government and how all of that stuff is bad and so forth. But you're living off social security right now. You're taking food stamps, motherfucker, and you think that big government is a bad thing. It's like, there is no level of like self-reflection going on with Ayn Rand, and that's the problem there. And I think that's why most people read Ayn Rand. When you're a teenager hating your parents, Ayn Rand can be very satisfying to read, but most people snap out of that. The only people who don't snap out of that are oftentimes right-wing libertarians, who usually have enough sort of like wealth and privilege that they can afford still feeling disenfranchised while still being able to afford everything, and not ever being forced to actually do self-reflection. And it's just like frustratingly aggravating, because she could have gone like all kinds of other ways, but she never did. And that's the frustrating part about her. Not that I would like ever call Murray Rothbard a reasonable person, but
Yeah, well, I'm more of a fan of like Mises and Hayek. I find again Rothbard kind of goes a little too far, especially in I feel he flirted with a lot of like he flirted with like Holocaust denial. I'm like, I don't want to fucking deal with that, even though he was Jewish, ironically enough.
Yeah, I mean, you might really want to read Globalists by Quinn Slobodian, because he does, as I said, it's a history of neoliberalism, and he's obviously, Slobodian himself is definitely a leftist guy, but he's very much focusing on like the historical elements, on like how Mises and Hayek growing up in the last sort of like days of the Habsburg Empire, how that influences their thinking on a lot of things. And he's very nuanced in that, and he's often looking at like how sort of like neoliberalism oftentimes gets hijacked by certain people and pushed to the right in a way that is not necessarily where people like Mises and Hayek would want to go with that, but that because of the way they phrase their theories, they left it open to sort of like people with all kinds of other additional political views to hijack those thoughts and push sort of like neoliberalism into libertarianism, into some really weird racist far right bullshit over time. And he's looking at those elements more in like a historical element, and
I'll have to find
it's
that.
worthwhile. It's really good.
Globalist book. Quinn Slobodian? Is that it?
Quinn Slobodian, Globalists.
Okay, I found it. All right. It's on Goodreads. Should be. I will add it. Because, I'm always interested in...
Yeah.
Slap that. There we go. But yeah, no, it's... I find they're a bit more reasonable. Also, I'm not an anarchist. I mean, I was for a while, but I'm like, no, I'm not doing that no more. But I'm more hate to sound like Hobbes here, but I do think we need some kind of structure and rules. Not saying anarchism doesn't believe in that. I know they don't. They do. But
it kind of depends on whether you're like more on the anarcho-syndicalist side of things or more on the anarcho-capitalist side of things, because those are obviously very different elements of anarchism in a lot of ways. But yeah, Hobbes is fascinating as a writer, and I wouldn't call him an Enlightenment philosopher. What you said earlier, he's more.
Well, I was asking if he was. I don't know if he was or not.
He's slightly too early. It's 17th century, very early Enlightenment, maybe late Renaissance, early Enlightenment, I would say. In a lot of ways, like you usually start with like people like, Hobbes, not Hobbes, but like you start with people like Locke, basically. That's sort of like around 1700 is usually when you start thinking about like Enlightenment in that regard. And then you obviously have the French Enlightenment. But you can Hobbes kind of falls outside of that with that specific sort of historical context of him going through like the British, the English Civil War and all of that, which has like a huge impact on Hobbes and his sort of ideas on society, which makes a lot of sense when you realize that that's during the Civil War basically. And of course, his experience and his first work, which was him translating Thucydides' the Peloponnesian War. And that is a very, very pessimistic book indeed.
Yeah, it's yeah, no, it does go into more depth. I mean, the movie why I think the movie is really really impressive is because they managed to condense this very big, massive book into a more digestible while keeping the tone and spirit of the original book, which is what I think an adaptation should do at its best. But yes, the book does go into a lot more detail about like Exley and Bud White and Jack Vincennes. Though I do it is hard for me not to see Guy Pearce and Russell Crowe when I read LA Confidential and read about Bud White and Ed Exley, because they embodied those roles so well. I'm always trying to get Raph to read Elroy. I'm curious what he would think of him. I could see Raph either really appreciating what he does or outright hating him. I'd be curious to hear either or, if either or take.
I can appreciate things that I hate if they're done well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I would be curious to hear your thoughts, because they're actually putting out new audio books for the LA Quartet. So they're out there.
I know they exist. I don't know who's narrating them, but I can find out. Shouldn't be that hard.
I like this question I got on Quora. What do you think of Philip Pullman's books? He has great ideas, but he would rather fucking waste them on ranting about the Catholic Church, because fuck you for wanting a good story. I'm Philip Pullman. So there you go. I don't like Philip Pullman's books that I've read. And Amanda, that's her favorite trilogy, a fantasy trilogy of all time. And I'm like, color me shocked. It's basically fantasy written by a new atheist, so that makes a lot of sense.
I have only watched the that first movie. I have never read them. I don't mind ranting about the Catholic Church. There's certainly lots to be ranting about.
I don't mind it either. He just doesn't say anything interesting. Like that's the thing. I'm like, you have this really cool, interesting world you're building up here that's not at all like other fantasy out there, and you fucking waste time making the most basic, like 14-year-old Reddit atheist rantings about the Catholic Church. I mean, it's just, what are you doing? Don't do that. I don't want to tell you how to freaking do your job, but don't do it like that.
Confidential 17 hours audiobook, which is, I guess, something like 500 pages, probably.
Yeah, it's almost 500 pages.
Yeah. Narrated by one Craig Wasson or Wesson. I don't know. I don't know. At some point. No, I haven't read his Dark Materials. I might at some point. I've certainly read books that rant against the Catholic Church in interesting ways. So I'm not saying it's impossible to do that.
No,
I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know if Pullman is doing a good job at it. I don't know that.
I mean, I'm not really a big fan of the Catholic Church as an organization, but it's just like you're not saying anything that interesting.
I think it kind of depends. It's easy to hate the Catholic Church without actually acknowledging the interesting and good things that came from the Catholic Church existing.
Oh no, like I mean, I don't know if we'd have the world we have today if it wasn't for Catholicism, for better or for worse. And Islam as well. because Islam kind of created, or I think Islamic people or Arabic people created like algebra. So
I can't wait for you to read to get all the way to Jingo in the Discworld files.
oh man.
That one is really funny. It also talks about algebra and how the Clatchins, which is the Discworld equivalent of like generic the generic Orient, how the Clatchins invented all the words with L, like algebra
Oh
and
man.
alcohol, and then then Nobby is like, wait, they invented booze. That's pretty clever.
That's awesome.
No, that's certainly a thing. No, there's if you really want to read some pretty impressive philosophy I don't necessarily 100% agree with, there's always A Secular Age by Charles Taylor, who may be the currently most important philosopher that's still alive, or at least definitely up there in the top 2 or 3 when it comes to that kind of stuff. And it's like an 800-page book on, well, the beginnings of like secularism and so forth. And his theory is that the Catholic Church was a driver of secularism in the way that the Catholic Church furthered specific forms of research and so forth that into well, the Enlightenment in some ways. It's a theory. There are others.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a real big fan of like mega churches. I mean, I've attended Life Church, but that's because I actually think they're pretty sincere in what they're doing. It's just, but I mean, I don't think, you know. Then again, it's from my home state, so kind of biased
Yeah.
there. But like, I'm not against like churches or anything. I just don't really love like organized religion as a thing.
Innocent III is definitely one of my favorite popes. I'll say that.
Is he the
Certainly
one who
interesting.
clashed with King John? Or is that another guy? Is that another innocent?
I think that's a different Innocent. Innocent III is the one who ran the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215, 13-ish. He's the one who started the crusade that ended with plundering half of the Balkans instead of actually doing the thing that it's supposed to do. He was big in I had to write a term paper on Innocent the Fourth, the Third's Lateran Council canons on heresy law, because he had to deal with the Cathars and the Valdensians, and he's the one who did actually accept both the Franciscans and the Dominicans into as like accepted their rules as actual monastic orders, and declared the Valdensians and the Cathars at the same time as heretics. And it's interesting to look at what those are like hugely momentous decisions in like medieval politics and history, when that guy is sort of like the key sort of like pope when it comes to a lot of stuff, because he's like from 1190-ish to 12 something. He also was the first pope who had studied, not necessarily studied theology, but studied law in Bologna, which is obviously Europe's oldest university. And a beautiful one.
Oh no, he created the Inquisition. That's not good.
No, he did not create the Inquisition. That was the next one. That was Pope Innocent the Fourth. The Inquisition took a bit longer. That is 1250-ish, and then Innocent the Third died before that. Innocent the Fourth is the one who actually creates the Inquisition.
Well, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. That's
a different one. No, that's a different one. The Spanish Inquisition is not the same thing as the Roman Catholic Inquisition that you have at that time. Those are different.
Oh well, okay, never mind. Wrong historical joke.
But I know, but that's like one of those things that you kind of that it's easy to confuse those. The Catholic Inquisition is different from the Spanish Inquisition. Obviously, both are Catholic, but the Spanish a project of like the 15th century, and this is a project of the 13th century that is specifically sent out to combat heresy. In this case, it's Cathars and Waldensians, mostly in southern France and some parts of Italy and some parts of Spain. The kind of stuff that Guy Gavriel Kay wrote about in A Song for Arbonne, for example. That's that specific element of the Inquisition. And the Spanish Inquisition is obviously something that happens post 1492, once the Reconquista is basically done with reconquering all of Spain and doing the thing that happened, which is of course expelling all Jews and Muslims from the Iberian Peninsula and setting the Inquisition out to hunt everyone who's not a good Catholic. So that those are different organizations in a lot of ways.
I watched kind of going back in this sort of political weird thing we've been talking about. I was actually watching a conversation on this leftist YouTube channel that I sometimes
with
watch.
With Innocent the Third, what happened is you have the decrees from the Lateran Council, which sets down interesting things like Jews have to wear a mark on their clothing that makes it clear that they are Jews. It includes the idea that you have to go to confession once per year. All of those kind of things. It's still priests are not allowed to shed blood, so a lot of stuff needs to be handed over to secular authorities. And I think he did give Conrad of Marburg the sort of like the license to hunt heretics, which is obviously really funny because Conrad of Marburg, that's the Marburg I live in. That's right here. He also got murdered because he was going after a certain local noblemen, and noblemen at that point were still able to just like hunt down and kill inquisitors when they didn't like them. But like the actual formalized Inquisition, that's Innocent IV, a bit later.
I'm trying to find out what this leftist channel is called because I'm trying to look it up. But I was watching this leftist channel the other day that I sometimes watch because I like to listen to side I disagree with. It's Navarra Media. They're basically
the British guys, yeah.
Yeah, they're basically like a British like grassroots leftist like YouTube channel. They were talking with Peter Hitchens the other day. And Peter Hitchens is really fascinating to me because like he's very like socially conservative in a lot of ways, but he's also like very liberal in a lot of ways too, which I find kind of fascinating.
They did have like a really cool interview with China Miéville a couple of years ago.
They did, yeah. That's how I found him. It was also a very interesting conversation.
And they had a couple of interviews that Ash Sakar did with Blind Boy, the Irish rapper, artist, and so forth.
Blind Boy?
Stuff.
That's interesting.
He's called Blind Boy. His stage name is Blind Boy because he always wears like a plastic bag over his head so you don't know how he looks and all of that. Really interesting stuff on, things like Kneecap and Gaza and all kinds of stuff. Like really good interviews. Like their long form interviews are often really good. Their politics are sometimes weird, and they've recently done a lot of stuff on like super intelligence, and I think they're completely wrong in that regard. But
bunch of terrorists. No, I mean, I don't know if like I said, I'm pretty kind of over here and they're over there, but I like watching them from time to time because they are willing to. They have a lot of interesting chats, and they're of course China Miéville was on there, which is how I found out who they were. I'm like, this is a pretty interesting conversation. Also, Tharnell asks, "What Guy Gavriel Kay have you read, Raf?"
I have read the what's it called, Fionavar Tapestry, and I've read Tigana. And I've started A Song for Arbonne and then stopped for no specific reason. And I will get back to finishing Song for Arbonne and continue. I already own all of his stuff except for the latest one. Yeah, I just got
Ooh.
sidetracked. I did start making videos on the Guy Gavriel K stuff and looking at how you can use Guy Gavriel K to explore different lenses through which to read fantasy. And I did make videos for the 3 Fiona Var books and for Tigana. And then I get sidetracked.
Oh, I remember you like I think you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I remember you had like issues with like sexual content in Guy Gabriel K. I don't know anything about this because I haven't read any K yet. I would like to, though, at some point.
Yes and no. There's a scene in A Song for Our Bond that is, I feel, very crude. So Guy Gavriel K has always had sexual content in his writings, and I know people have been frustrated with the sexual content in Tigana. I did not have any problems with the mild bondage stuff in Tigana. That's like I've read far more extreme stuff over the years, right? I'm fine with that. I think there's a weird horniness in Guy Gavriel K sometimes. My point in
There's a weird horniness in a lot of fantasy, I've noticed.
I think with Guy Gavriel K, it often stands out because Guy Gavriel K has a very elevated sort of prose style. Like he's really uses lots of complicated words. He's famously the person who helped Christopher Tolkien write up and finish up the Silmarillion. So he's a very heavily influenced by Tolkien. It's a very specific prose style, and then he still talks very explicitly about fucking, and that can feel sort of incongruous in a way, like because you're not expecting that. Like it's not as like tame as Tolkien, but it is his general prose style is very much like that. And then suddenly the genitals come out, and it's like that would shock you if Tolkien would do that, right? I mean,
yeah.
So I think sometimes people read Guy Gavriel K, and then you come to that point where you have like the whole like bondage sex scene, and you're suddenly, holy shit, what's going on here? And that's more like the inherent prudishness of a lot of fantasy readers.
Yeah, I was about to say, I've noticed a lot of like BookTube is kind of weird about sex as well, which I can't really criticize too much because I'm one of those people. But I mean, I'm not prudish or anything, but I'm just kind of like,
I think the issue there is that the two things that are incredibly personal are humor and sex. Those are the two things that are like will fail in like 99% of situations. When you write humor, chances are people will not actually get the joke or not understand because we don't share that kind of humor. And to establish like that connection, to have the same sort of like sense of humor and so forth, requires more of like a conversation. You don't necessarily have that when you're writing a book. The same goes for sexuality, which is like a very, very personal thing. So if you're writing out an explicit sort of erotic scene in and try to make it sort of feel spicy, erotic, or whatever term you want to use, right? If you want to make it feel that, it will come across as like incredibly awkward to like most readers, the same way that reading someone else's sexting will also feel ridiculous, right? Most cases, because it is such a very specifically personal kind of thing. So that's one reason why I don't think there's necessarily a problem there. I would still argue that there is a large swath of like, especially of at least some fantasy readers that react very aggressively in that regard, which is probably partly why some people really hate romantasy, which is obviously going there. And I think Guy Gavriel K often gets criticized because he does have like explicit graphic sex scenes in there that people don't necessarily expect in something that otherwise reads like, say, Ted Williams. And when I say Ted Williams, I mean more like the Dragonbone Chair.
Right
and
now.
I think and I think that is part of it. My problem with this Song for Arbonne is the combination. There's a scene relatively early on where the stand-in for like the northern French king basically has like a banquet with like his people, and the wife of one of his dukes is forced to be under the table and give blowjobs to different other people of his noblemen, and it's basically just him using that as to demonstrate his power to other people.
Well, okay.
And that is already, that is a very specific choice. But what it also does, and that's sort of like the second layer there, is that Guy Gavriel Kay is taking a very clear position, a political position there, because if this is a novel that is basically about the idea that northern France is taking over Occitania during the Cathar, the Albigensian Crusade, because those guys in Occitania are all heretics, and you need to do that heretic crusade against them, and all of that, which was very much not about actual heresy in a lot of ways, but was very much the Paris-based northern French royalty basically finding a way to finally centralize and take over control of all of France. So there is a political thing here. And what Guy Gavriel Kay does in that situation is very much take the side of southern France as this like romantic area where you have the troubadour culture and all of those things, and that's all wonderful and so forth. And you have those stupid, brutal, crude barbarians in the north, and the way I'll show that is by having that specific scene as the first scene at the northern court. And that is just such a unnecessarily crude way of making a very blunt point about who's the good guys and who's the bad guys in something that, if you have read like history around that time, is not that straightforward. And that's kind of what really, really annoyed me in that situation, because it's like unnecessarily crude, and like, hey, we have this high art and troubadours and the high art of romantic of like medieval romance writing and singing and song and art there, and you have those stupid uncultured guys in the north, and the way I show that is by having that scene. I'm like, that's unnecessary. That is just like bad.
Ben says a lot of people seem to criticize Erikson over sexual scenes as well. I personally found he balanced it in a way that worked, which, I mean, I don't really have a lot of comment on that. I've only read the one, Gardens of the Moon. So, Raph, go nuts.
I don't know. There are some scenes where that made me feel uncomfortable. There are some that are supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. I don't think he's good. He's bad at it. It's always like there's always like a personal hit or miss, whether which scenes will personally kind of really make you cringe or whatever. That will always happen.
I mean, there's not really that many sexual scenes in
Gardens of the Moon, definitely
Dan
not.
Trilogy. I mean, there's there's one sex scene in Prophet of Edan, or actually there's only like 2, but on the other one of the guys goes crazy and strangles his wife to death, so I don't really count it. But there's one sex scene though, and it's in Prophet of Edan. So
I haven't read those, so I will not say anything on that. I think what I find interesting with Erikson is, and something I really appreciate about Erikson, is that he does have, when he has sexual content, it does not feel gratuitous. Like, there is sex in there, but it's usually it's people that are not described in like a voyeuristic way, where it's like they're definitely it's not written for like a very specific sort of like, it doesn't feel pornographic. Like when we look at Gardens of the Moon, like the main sort of like sex scenes in quotes that you get are with Piran and Tattersail, and the way that Tattersail is described, and this is not the not the voluptuous maiden Conan kind of thing. It's very much a different sort of form. It feels more I don't know, probably realistic. And you have a lot of that later on, where you have like middle-aged people engaging in sex, for example, and which is something that a lot of like fantasy, when it does have like sex scenes, usually it's young people. Yeah, you know what I mean? It feels more.
I mean, I think there are a couple of fantasy authors who write sex well. Like, I think China Miéville writes sex pretty well.
Yeah.
I think Joe Abercrombie does sex very well. I mean, I know some people might have a hassle with it, but I personally like how he does it.
I
Um,
think it's the thing with Abercrombie's sex scenes. I find is more it's very Abercrombie in in the same way that like it's always very physical with a slight focus on the comedic slapstick and awkward, right? The
that's
same
true.
way,
Yeah,
like the same way that like every single combat scene has at least one person slipping and falling on their ass. There's always going to be something in like in any sex scene where something kind of awkward happens, which is realistic, like in in general, because humans, you know,
it's
humans
not
are
like
awkward.
porn, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
but
that's the point. Yeah,
but
so I agree
Ben,
with that. It's more that like once you've read like all of Abercrombie, because that's like the only sort of like style he has. That's that sort of like slightly awkward slapstick element in there. At some point, I think the same way that his combat kind of becomes his battle scenes become somewhat repetitive. His sex scenes also become repetitive after a while. After you've read like 9 or 10 of his books, you're like, yeah, I get it.
Ben asks me when am I planning on reading Dead House Gates? I don't know yet. Kind of taking a break from the epic fantasy for a minute. I'm gonna try and read more standalones in 2026 because I'm just kind of like I'm kind of burned out on epic fantasy at the moment. Hopefully soon. I don't know. I don't want to put a date on it because I don't want to make people get super excited.
Like
And I'll be like,
Deadhouse
oh, I
Gate
can't
has
get to it, and then people are like, no, Britain, yeah. So sorry about that.
Deadhouse Gate does have some very dark elements when it comes to sexual violence in there. Just as a heads up,
Yeah,
it's
I heard he doesn't hold back on the sexual violence because I know like Carsa Orlong's he's kind of a menace.
um the main thing is that what Erickson does, and that's what Ben brought up, is like he does not actually get into like graphic detail. Like the way where like you read Abercrombie and it's all about grunting and specific moving of specific body parts and so forth. And Erickson usually doesn't do that unless it is essential for what he's trying to say. And
Yeah,
it's more
I
about it in Deadhouse Gates. It's more about a very young person being forced into different forms of sexual violence, and that can be
oh
very uncomfortable.
oh yeah, I've heard that Dead House Gates has a couple of like big tearjerker moments, but excuse me,
Ah, it's got a happy ending.
it's what people tell me. I don't know if I should believe them or not. That's the thing.
Deadhouse Gates has a happy ending because the dog survives.
Well, that's always good. No, I might get some flack from this, but I mean, I thought Neil Gaiman wrote some good sex scenes in some of his books. Like, they're not terrible, but also
It's been a
Angela
while.
Carter. I read some of her. I read The Bloody Chamber recently, and she wrote some pretty
Yeah.
good sex scenes as well. So
I don't know with Neil Gaiman. Obviously, it's kind of difficult to now with all the things we know now. But for me, with I don't know how many sex scenes I remember from Neil Gaiman stuff. It's more like it was really uncomfortable in Ocean at the End of the Lane, but that was kind of the point.
hello, Helena. How you doing? Yeah, no. I was about to say, that's. I actually read something a while back. I think we've talked about this before, but it was because Neil Gaiman was raised up in Scientology. His dad was like a big member of like the Sea Org. And I heard some
Yeah,
speculation from like anti-Scientology websites about how Ocean at the End of the Lane is kind of
yeah.
him coming to terms with that part of his life in a way. Which I kind of put it down as like hearsay. I'm like, there's a lot of hearsay here. I don't really know if this is true. But after like stuff recently, I'm like, maybe they had a point.
It's
Maybe.
complicated. But you know, And yeah, hello, Helena. But yeah, I think my main point is like sex scenes in books are difficult to pull off because you will, no matter what you write, they will always be off-putting, cringy, and so forth to a large part of your audience. It just will be a different part of your audience every single time because it is such a personal thing. The same way that humor is like. I think in that regard, Erickson is like a really interesting example because Erickson does have like a very broad spectrum of humor, and he has some very, very basic fecal humor at some point, right? That stuff is coming up a lot. Like he's talking about shit in funny ways several fucking times, and then he has some very high concept humor in another place, and you have people that really enjoy one part of that, and then people go like really enjoying another part and being really put off by puns and wordplays, and other people go like, why does Carter Orlong have to wrestle a dinosaur knee deep in shit? Why is that funny? Which is maybe something that happens in one of the books.
Speaking of weird sexual things that have happened in recent months, I was watching. I watched a 2.5 hour kind of live stream thing. Not really live stream. It was like edit of a live stream from a guy called Papa Gut. He's kind of like a
Yeah,
reactor
no.
kind of. I want to say he's a shit poster, but he kind of is a little bit. There's a little
Yeah.
shit posty. But he was talking about the whole Daniel Green Naomi King situation, and I watched that. I watched it a couple times, and it just made me more and more angry about that whole situation. I kind of went full wrath mode on some parts. I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. And also, I don't think we're getting the full story, probably for understandable reasons. But there are some blanks that I don't know. Maybe it's just me being a journalist, being trained as a journalist. But my nose has been kind of it's it's hard to look away in a weird way.
There's a lot of stuff going on there that I think is very specific to the way we talk about sexual violence on the internet versus other aspects there. There's a lot goes on there, I think, which is why the whole situation was so frustrating to see how YouTube reacted to that in all kinds of ways, and that is like the most frustrating part because there is a legal definition of certain elements of sexual violence, and then there is something else, and that difference, that differentiation is not made by most people. It's like, well, it's believe all victims, but it's also innocent until proven guilty. But those are two different things. Innocent until proven guilty is a legal concept. That's the law. Believe all victims is not a legal thing. That's a social thing, and those are different elements. And you can live in a society where you go like, we believe all victims first and foremost, and the law will still operate on a different element because those are different elements of society.
The point I'm trying to get to, which is just kind of pissed me off as of late, is I kind of sympathize with what Alan said a while ago of Alexandria fame, where he's like, I just wish that people would be consistent with their principles. Because I'm just because I was watching some stuff of because Daniel Green is one of those kind of I guess you want to call it he definitely leans left, we'll just say. We'll just go with that. Somewhat, yes. And he's kind of one of those guys who, like, when he watches a movie like Some Like It Hot, he'll talk about the stuff that's problematic about it, which whatever. I don't give a shit about that. But I don't know, just kind of rubs me the wrong way now. I've said this a couple times, especially with the like whole Audible thing that happened recently. Kind of just pissed, just kind of like I don't know. Like, Raph, what do you think about this?
I'm gonna get myself a beer and then we can talk about that in detail.
Oh, okay, go get another beer. But it just pisses me off. I don't know why. Well, I know why. It's just kind of that real frustrating, you know. Like, I don't mind if you have principles I disagree with, just as long as you have those principles and stick by them. That's totally fine. Hello, Aaron. How you doing? I'm about to rant about principles here. But if you have principles, stick to them. You know, like that's what frustrates me. It's like, if you're gonna do this performative pointing out all the problematic stuff, stick with that. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody. It just really frustrates me.
Hey, Aaron.
Which Aaron's here. But yeah, no, I'm left kind of pissed off at the situation. Yeah, open marriage is fucking bullshit. I don't really. I mean, if you do that, that's great. Like, that's totally fine. But I don't think it really works. So
I have friends, and there it seems to work. So no, but I think the idea of hypocrisy is something that we have taken to absolute extremes these days. Humans are fucking messy. They have always been messy, and that has nothing to do with politics.
that's
It's
true.
You have people that point out every single problematic element in like an older text, and then still do horrific shit on the side. And you have all the homophobia in the conservative in the Republican Party, and still every single time there's a CPAC, all the grinder servers in that area overload because you know what I mean. Practice what you preach is something that doesn't even happen within the church.
Well,
I
yeah,
think
it's part of the human condition, unfortunately.
yeah,
I mean,
and I think
look, I'm not saying I'm like a bastion of integrity here. I mean, I've fucked up plenty of times.
yeah, and I mean, striving
There's
striving
certain
for
times I'm like, yeah, you know, there are things I'm very hardline about, and then there's stuff I'm more forgiving about. I mean, that's just part
yeah,
of
of
being
course.
human, of course.
I mean, I feel like most of us strive for a certain form of integrity in some way or another. I know I do. That's one part. Then there is, as I said, there are some things, especially when it comes to sexual violence and sexual harassment and so forth, where we know that the legal system is very much lagging behind certain other things, where it is very, very difficult to get any legal recognition and so forth as a victim. That is just unfortunate in a lot of ways. One example that I think explains it, like the definitions of sexual violence are because of how law works, and you have to write down certain definitions and so forth. And it's like, for the longest time, something was only considered sexual assault if actual like penetration happened. And at some
Now,
point, it was only vaginal penetration. So a lot of other stuff that you would definitely consider, rape, not to put too fine a point of it, just didn't actually have any legal consequences because the thing didn't happen in that regard. And one specific, like, even more ridiculous because of that element is like, for the longest time in German law, once again, rape was only penetration, vaginal penetration, and there have been situations, legal situations that went to court and then had to be figured out and so forth, where someone raped a trans woman that had bottom surgery. But because that is not considered biologically a vagina, that was not considered rape. And and you see what I mean? My point is that reducing sexual violence to legal definitions is incredibly harmful, because there's a lot of stuff that leaves insane personal harm with the victims that is not covered by law, because law is by its nature has to be generalized in all kinds of ways. And
yeah, I mean,
that is
I think you and I differ here, because like, I don't think that like Daniel did I don't think he like assaulted her, but I do think Like, he totally used his clout to get tail, and that's fucked up. That's wrong. Like, I don't, that's disgusting.
That's what, like, there was,
and I think there should be some accountability there that really hasn't happened, because Naomi King is also, has her skeletons that, and kind of just imploded her own case in the same week, which, doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
There's so many dimensions to that. Like, one dimension there is, of course, one important dimension that we often ignore in that regard. Like on a legal level, I don't think anything legal can come out of that situation for all kinds of reasons. I personally would argue that if you have this much of a power difference, then the idea of consent becomes very, very murky, to put it mildly. So,
like I said, I think we differ a little bit on this, which,
but like in general, like my point there was more beyond that specific element is the way we approach that conversation in general, and two general things that I think we need to talk about with a lot of like how we talk about harassment and so forth on the internet. A lot of people that are sort of like first generation influencers on social media started these things very, very young and blew up very, very young. And there is no training, right? If you are a bit of a nerd, and a lot of people that are social media influencers are neurodivergent in one way or another, or at least socially awkward in one way or another, and so forth, and suddenly you blow up and you're like 17, 18 years old, and you have 1 million people watching you. Obviously, with the numbers vary, but my point is, suddenly you have like opportunities that you have not had before. And that's the same thing you had with, say, rock musicians in the 70s and 80s and shit like that. And you suddenly have a level of power that is not corresponding to your abilities to think reasonably, to act responsibly, or anything of the sorts. And that's why you have a lot of, like, outside of the bookish part of YouTube, you have so many scandals and so many situations where YouTubers, TikTok stars, whatever, like cross boundaries and cause insane harm, because they're basically young people that suddenly had a level of power in one way or another at the moment where you're like, where it's just a fucking kid, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but fucking Joe, you killing me over here. I'm just no, yeah, no. I mean, I see what you're saying. It's just I mean, I do agree with you that it is a mess, and I mean, I know it's kind of like too late to get kind of indignant about it, but it's just kind of like it's bugged me for the past like fuck me. How long is it? Almost 8 months now. It's been almost like 8 months, I think, and I'm just like, this is freaking ridiculous.
I think, like, my main point is that you have a lot of people that have all kinds of mental health issues, because that's a lot of people that end up on social media. That's people with all kinds of trauma and so forth to even begin with, right? And those people are messy. They are even messier than most people are messy in general, right? And that's why you will never get like your perfect victim in any way, shape, or form. And that's one part. And the other part is that you have a lot of people that are they're not like fully grown up adults with like life experience or anything of the sort. So a lot of really dumb, bad, traumatizing shit happens. And because it does happen this has always happened, but it used to be not on like a broad, like wide stage. So, it didn't leave as much of like a larger impact around that, because suddenly this is, everyone has seen this and everyone has heard this, and you still have to interact with those kind of people. If you had a bad in not too bad, but like still bad sort of encounter in high school, you move away after high school, you'll never see that person again. If you are in the same social circles or on the same social media platform, it's very difficult to get beyond those situations. That makes it very hard to move beyond milder trauma. And I think that all of these things kind of come into a space where we still are figuring out how to do shit and how to interact with stuff. And I think That is
Now,
one of the things that makes the whole situation so messy.
no, I mean, if she had just come out and been like, "Hey, this guy kind of led me on and was kind of shitty to me," like that's fine. I don't know if we to kind of paraphrase something Papa Gut said. I don't think we need to know about it on the internet. But with all that said, I do think that would have been fine. Like that's totally valid, you know. But you know, she did what she did, and well, they did what they did, and that's kind of what happened there.
Helena, there is certainly something to that, that it is very difficult if you are, and it doesn't have to be a very powerful man. It's the same way the other way around. A very powerful person does certainly have difficulties when it comes to,
Hello there.
you know, to that power imbalance, because it does exist outside of like very strict, teacher student. For example, in Germany, teacher student or other relations like that where you have like an actual relation of responsibility, that stuff is actively illegal in Germany. No matter the age gap, that is illegal, because of course. But yeah, there is a problem if you are a very famous person, no matter your gender, no matter your sexual identity and so forth, right? Your sexuality. This is, I don't know, that's the point. It's like it is difficult to interact with people in general, like not just on like when it comes to relationships or whatever, but like friendships as well. It's like that is unfortunately the problem of being famous. That is unfortunately so. Like you think any like very famous musician, actor, politician, or whatever has like regular interactions with people that don't also are like from their specific circle? I don't think that is possible. I mean, like meaningful, deeper relationships beyond just saying hello. I don't think that that is something that we need to figure out how to deal with, but that is just the case.
Yeah, it's a mess, and it's just kind of, and it just kind of has thrown me off in just how like quickly people just kind of were like, oh yeah, that happened. Okay, let's move on to whatever's going on next. It was just weird. It was just weird all around. Guard Skyrim. I'm forgetting who this is. I mean, hey, if Helena wants to come on, like I said, it's open invite if anyone wants to pop in for a little bit.
Have you put this, is the link in like the description, or anyway, not. I think it's complicated, and the relation of care, that's a legal thing. But yeah, I mean, you read like any like biographies, reports, or anything from like 1970s, 80s, and 90s, like music biographies and so forth. That is still very close to to I don't think consent was like a big idea. That, I mean, the other part is of course that consent is something that is still very undertaught in a lot of ways. Like I did not get taught any rules of consent when I had like any sex at school. It was just assumed that any sexual interaction I would have would be consensual. That's just like the basic parameter that was like how sex ed was taught to me. And I assume it has changed by now, but I don't know how much. And also obviously depends on, the country and so forth. But like these ideas are unfortunately still very new, which is ridiculous when you think about it. But that's its own thing.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Going back to my original point, I'm kind of pissed off at I'm kind of pissed off at people who don't live up to their supposed principles. Kind of the same beef I have with like a Thomas Jefferson, but that's a whole other can of worms I don't want to get into today. But yeah, no, it's it just kind of pisses me off a bit.
Yep. I mean, if you don't feel brave enough right now, Helena, maybe another time would be cool. Anyway, living up to principles is hard, and it's very difficult to do that. And I think most of us have failed at it from time to time, because it is kind of difficult. And
Also,
the way we,
like Daniel Green is like the last person I would have like suspected of being like a horn dog. Like he seemed like, sure, he seemed a little eccentric, but you know, like I mean, who isn't on this part of YouTube? But I mean, I don't know. He seemed like a straight laced enough guy. like here's my thing. Like if you're gonna be a degenerate horn dog, just be honest about it. You know, like that's the thing. Don't, you know, I mean, don't like, you know, do anything bad, but like if you're gonna be like a horn dog, like at least be freaking honest about it. Like, you know. That's my thing.
and I don't know. I think so much of this is like difficult because you are also like a public. You're performing all the time, right? And you do
That's
something,
true.
and
Yeah.
your public persona sort of doesn't gel with what you are doing in private, and maybe you
Well, I'm not
you
gonna
feel like you
go on
fucked up and so
streams and
forth.
talk about how much pussy I slay, but I am gonna, yeah. But it's like, bro, if you're gonna be like a fucking, like, if you're gonna be a horn dog, just be like, yeah, like, I like women, bro. That's fine. I don't know if
I
it's
don't
moral.
necessarily,
It's fine.
Helena. I don't think Vogue comes into that.
I was about to say, is it woke to have a sugar baby? I was about to say, I don't think that's woke. I think that's just one of the oldest trades in motion. So
No,
is prostitution woke? I don't think so.
Nah, the point is like Vogue is not a category that applies here. Obviously, Vogue is not exactly a category to begin with, so it doesn't really matter. I think it's I think it is totally fine if everyone is old enough to consent to that kind of thing. So I don't mind.
Well, I think they were already kind of like talking, if you want to call it that, before that whole
Oh yeah,
debacle.
that was kind of the point, right? The way I read it at the time, when I watched the first video and so forth, it was not. It was very much that they had been having a very, very spicy conversation, and maybe even actually had hung out before and actually had sex before. I don't know, but in that situation, because she didn't want it in that specific moment. That was the point. And you know what I mean? It was not just. It was like they wanted to meet up and possibly actually have sex or whatever, but in that situation, because she had had her edibles and had been stoned and wanted to sleep it off, and he decided to still go at it. That was her claim, and I think that kind of got lost in the whole like larger conversation. It was not general like, hey, it was about her saying no in that specific instance that kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah, but like there are certain things, even that original video, and I watch it with hindsight, I'm like, why okay. Just for instance, why would she, if she got assaulted, which, so let's just throw this out here. If she was assaulted, why the fuck would she say, I talked to his girlfriend because I know what it's like to be cheated on and it fucking sucks? Why would you say it like that? Now, I get people are messy. I get that. But why would you say it specifically like that? Unless it was consensual. Makes no sense to me. Which I'm sure there's like a bag of worms there, but like, I don't know.
That's the point. Like if they had been having that specific affair outside of those specific events in Vegas, then there was like a form of cheating. But her claims of assault, they sent her on that one specific moment where she said no, and he still did it according to her, her narrative. And those are two different things, and they kind of get conflated in the whole conversation, I think.
Maybe.
But
it's still a very odd characterization if you got assaulted. Like, I don't consider assault like cheating on somebody. Like assault is that's the whole other fucking thing,
Yeah, but that's my point. The cheating was, I would argue, the cheating would be the whole thing around that, like sexting before that, possibly hooking up before that. That is the cheating part. And they met up possibly for them to continue that. And in that specific situation, in that moment, at that specific point in time, she didn't want to do it for, reasons of being stoned and so forth. And that's the assault. That's one event in a larger sort of like frame of cheating. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Those are two things. They are not the same. They are not the same thing.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's just like I don't know. That just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. In hindsight, I should say. Like at the time, I didn't watch it when it first came out because I was like, I don't want to fucking deal with that. I was already kind of reeling from some other stuff at the time, so I wasn't really in a great headspace. But I'm watching it with hindsight now, and I'm just kind of like, okay. I mean, I get that. I'm not saying like I don't know. Like I said, it's a mess. I don't know. I personally don't think that sexual assault happened, but I do think I do think there was some, as Raph points out, I do think there was some stuff with power imbalance. And I think Daniel Green should have been held more accountable for that than what he got, basically. And that kind of irritated me.
Look, the way I read it at the time, it was like, hey, they met up to hook up and have sex, but in that specific moment, she was too stoned and she said no, and he did it anyway, and that's the thing that fucked her up.
Mm.
And that would be, if that was the thing that happened, that would be assault, no matter the intentions before and afterwards, because in that situation, she said no, and that's like, even if you are in a consensual relationship, in that situation, if someone says, hey, not right now, I don't want it,
Look,
that is
that's
still
true.
a thing.
That's true, Guard Skyrim. Like I said, I think there are parts of the story that have not been told. Even though I don't think he assaulted her by by legal definition, I personally don't think that happened. I do think some fuckery happened that's not being talked about because of whatever reasoning. And there's also the fact she kind of destroyed her credibility with her other videos, but I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like it's exactly. Helene is right. I'm not saying anyone who's right or wrong. There's just conflicting stuff that was released. That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. There's stuff that just isn't. Like I said, I don't think Naomi's telling the full truth here. I don't think Daniel's telling the whole truth either. And that's just been absolutely bothering me as a journalist because we're trained to like, oh, there's a story here. Now, I don't think anyone would talk to me in those camps because like, who the fuck are you? But it's something it's bugged me. It's
I think,
bugged me.
it is really complicated in all kinds of ways, and it's frustrating. What I find frustrating is still the point that people go like, well, believe all victims, but that means wait for the other side to tell their story, and that is not what believe all victims means. And that's like the really frustrating part.
Should be said. I think it should be said that take all victims seriously. I think that's what should be said.
The point is, if someone comes forward with accusations, what you do in that situation is you support the victim, you emphasize their voice. You don't have to do, you just like emphasize their voice and so forth. Once other information comes up, you can still change your mind, but what you need to do is to actually amplify their voice at that moment, because in a lot of situations, in a lot of cases, victims will be in a, well, there will be a power dynamic. The person they will accuse will, if this stuff happens publicly, will have a much larger platform, a much larger power and so forth. So you need to amplify that voice in the beginning. You can still change your mind afterwards, but if you wait for the other side to take over the narrative, that is where you cause massive harm. And that's why that whole like backlash that happened, where everyone was like, well, you should have waited until Daniel said something. No, you should not wait until the other side says something. You support the first person. You can still change your mind afterwards, but you need to make sure that voice gets out, because otherwise it will just get lost and be drowned, no matter what actually happened. And that's the thing that frustrates me so much about the whole conversation, because
I see where you're coming from. I kind of disagree a little bit, because I don't know if that's fair necessarily, but I get what you're saying. Though. I understand what you're getting at, and yeah, I agree with when she reenacted what happened. That's when I'm like, this shit did not fucking happen. I'm sorry. I've known people who've been assaulted. I've had people. I have never in my life seen anything like that. As a matter of fact, most of the people I've met who've been assaulted have a really hard time even talking about it. It makes no sense. Made no sense whatsoever. That completely destroyed their credibility.
Bye, Joe.
I don't know what Raph thinks. I don't know if you watched the second video, Raph.
I've watched the second video and I've watched the third video. I've watched all of it at the time. And I did not make a video at the time. I did just at the time when her first video came out, all I did was repost it on my community tab. I have privated that specific part. I did unsubscribe from Daniel Green and I have not resubscribed, and that's all I did at that point. The thing is, I've been in situations as someone who has, works in, local associations, clubs or whatever, in someone in the administration, sort of. I've had to deal with accusations against members of associations, accusations of sexual violence and so forth. I've had to deal with that in my personal life as sort of like a bystander. It has never happened to me. I've had friends who have been assaulted, because if you know more than like 3 or 4 women, you probably know someone who has been sexually harassed at some point, who had very clear thing, but it still didn't go anywhere in courts, because we all know that rape accusations rarely actually get convicted, because that's just like how courts are.
Yeah, that's why sexual assault's really hard to like prove. It is a lot of he said, she said.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's why I'm so frustrated with how all of that works, and that's why I think, yes, did she absolutely wreck her credibility with that second video and so forth? Absolutely, but I don't have to judge her credibility to amplify her voice or anyone's voice when they come forward the first time, because at that moment you need to amplify their voice so the accused person, the potential attacker, does actually not get to use their sort of like power level to just bury the whole thing. Because if Naomi King would have come forward, made her video, no one would have spread it, no one would have talked about it. No, maybe,
Oh, we got 16 years. Oh, no one's like, oh no, they're talking about the Daniel Green thing. Go.
But my point is like very few people would have watched that thing, and then Daniel Green would have just like, either just sent like a cease and desist, or just like made a video and going like, well, I was accused of this and here's my side of things. And because he has like 500,000 subscribers and she had like 100,000 at the time, right? The whole thing would have gone under and no one would have talked about it. And that would have happened no matter what she did afterwards. You know what I mean? And that's why I think why if accusations come out, the first step is to believe the person, believe the victim, no matter their gender, no matter their attacker. Just believe them, amplify their voice until things change. We are in those situations. We are bystanders. We can change our mind. We are also not judges or anything of the sorts. We have no legal power. We can change our minds. There's no thing beyond that. And that's why I think believing in the first place, amplifying, so that the thing becomes too big to bury, is incredibly important because powerful people, no matter their gender, will try to bury that, will use their larger platforms, their power, to bury such accusations. And that's why you need to amplify that the moment it comes out, and not wait for the other side to tell their story. That's my point here. You can still change your mind and go like, well, now that I've heard the other thing, they are in the right. That is always possible. But if you don't even amplify it the first time round, it will just get buried. And that is just unconscionable to me.
I'm so like I've bounced off of Gene Wolfe twice, so I don't know when I'm gonna read Book of the New Sun. I would like to read it though at some point because I want to at least try that before I either go, all right, Wolf is for me or he's not. I don't know yet, but so far I've bounced off of him twice. So hopefully I'll get to Book of the New Sun at some point in the future, but no plans at the moment. Well, yeah, it's. I agree with that. I think when, like I said, I find it. I read what I've read from Wolf. I've read The Land Across, and I read The Wizard, which is the first of the Wizard Knight duology. Land Across I didn't like at all, and The Wizard I liked, but just kind of, again, I was just really confused, which I know is kind of a thing with Gene Wolfe, but I just kind of had a hard time with it. I had a hard time like connecting with it, if that makes sense. I did like all the references to like Norse mythology though, so that was I don't know. But yeah, no, I've heard a lot of people really like the Book of the New Sun. I would like to get to it at some point, but I'm not in any rush to at the moment. So I'm not against reading it. That's what I'm saying.
I did enjoy The Wizard and The Knight. I like both. I like Wizard Knight.
Or is The Knight the first one? I read the first one.
The Knight is the first one, and the Wizard is the second one.
Sorry.
But for whatever reason, it's usually called the Wizard Knight.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Another thing that kind of bothers me in these kind of going back to this, I've seen some people on the internet go like, oh, Neil Gaiman was kind of a dick to me once. I saw this coming. It's like, okay, just because a guy was a dick to you once does not mean he was a rapist. But whatever. I don't want to get into that rabbit hole. Let's stick with the Daniel Greed rabbit hole.
Look, at the end of the day, I don't know. And for you, Helen, like when I say believe, it's more about supporting and amplifying. It's like I think belief is problematic in that when that first video came out, I think most people first video did believe her in that moment because of like how it worked and how powerful it was and how effective it was.
She made a good little argument there.
Yeah, no, that's sometimes like, of course, and belief is something that we don't necessarily that's like a larger thing that I've worked on when it came to like philosophy of religion and so forth, right? Like belief is something that we have very little conscious control over. It's like you watch something and on an intuitive level, you're like, yeah, this hits me. I'll believe her. And then you watch something else and your belief may change. You don't have conscious control over that. And that's, yeah. So I guess support all victims, amplify their voice. That's what I'm looking for. And if you don't want to use the word belief, then that's totally fine. But like, not saying anything until both sides have had time to say their piece does stack the deck against the victim automatically. And that I think is that is why you need to amplify the first voice, the first person that comes comes forward. You always need to do that and then change the mind.
The guy you made are you talking about the guy who Oh, okay, sorry, I got confused. Have the same zodiac sign? I didn't know that. Is he born in November? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a mess. I agree with that. I have not read Tom's Crossing yet. Jason gave me House of Leaves, which was very nice of him. I haven't read it yet though, because
Yeah. Anyway, I will probably slowly end it from my side because it's getting late, and
Yeah, I'm probably going to get off in a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, Demidrek. I just brought it up because I was ranting about people not living up to their own ideals, which, pisses me off to no end. Especially when it's like performative leftism, like that pisses me off even more. Like, it's just like, dog. Like, if you're gonna talk about this, social justice crap, you should at least have the common decency to at least live up to those principles. But it's fine. That
I
pisses
mean,
me off.
I am pretty active in like leftist things in general, and
Mhm.
there is a certain problem that you have a certain type of leftist alpha male, which is
Nah.
all kinds of problems. Like, to be clear, like there are certain people that are performatively probably also believed to be left, but they still have a lot of like tax that have a lot of like toxic masculinity. They can sort of drag through them being leftist at the same time, and that is a problem that left activism does still have in a lot of ways. Obviously, it becomes more of a thing if you're in like a more active sort of like protest culture and so forth, because that, depending on what kind of stuff you're doing there in activism, that requires levels of aggressivity, aggressiveness and so forth, where you're like, yeah, it's very easy to sort of like take that sort of like thing over into other parts. That is a thing that happens in leftist circles, definitely, and it's frustrating and so forth. And I
Yeah,
guess
like
the
Ref,
problem is, yeah,
you seem like a genuine guy. I mean, well, I know you are a genuine guy, but like, I don't think you use your. I don't even know if you have much clout, really.
no,
But
I
you
don't.
don't seem like the type to be like, hey, want to come back to my place and get going? And I mean, maybe you do that sometimes, consensually,
By
hopefully.
guard Skyrim.
But you don't really seem like that kind of guy. Oh God. Yeah, I guess performative politics pisses me off more than anything. I guess that's what I'm ranting about. Because I hate that crap. It's like
Desmond is also very clearly not a leftist, but that's another thing. Anyway,
and
um,
and
no,
and and and, and Naomi King does the same thing, by the way. I'm not saying Daniel is fully doing that, and Naomi's like this, you know, gazelle in the wind over here. It's just kind of I just think it's fucking bullshit, in all honesty. Not all of it. What
no,
I mean performative politics, not that kind of politics.
there's so many problems to the larger thing that go so much deeper, right? Like you just like said that social justice bullshit. And
Well,
I like think about those three words and think about what you just like said in that regard. I know what you mean, but like think about the words and try to step back and realize what
I'm not saying social justice is a bad thing.
I
I'm just
know.
saying performative social justice activism is bullshit.
Yeah, and the question is like, when is it performative, and how can you judge if something is a performance or not?
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in that Sam Vimes where I think everyone's kind of bullshitting on some level or another. But
Yeah,
I don't know
most
if
people are.
I don't know if I'm that cynical
I think
as Sam
the
Vimes.
thing is like we all are bullshitting up to a point because we have ideals of like who we want to be, and we try to be that, and sometimes we pretend to be that, and that is just like what being human means, right? That is unfortunately kind of built in.
Yeah, no, I see. But yeah, no, I don't know. Maybe it's my bias coming in, which we're all biased. I get that, but it's just kind of like because it's like if you don't have principles, then what's the which I know that's kind of a bullshit argument. Like if this person doesn't have principles, like what's the point of having principles? I know that's a ridiculous argument. but it's just like I don't know. It's I don't know. Yeah. And I think it wouldn't piss me off so much if Daniel Green still wasn't fucking doing it. Like, if he had toned it down after this whole bullshit, I'd have been like, okay, whatever. He's doing his whole thing, right? But, like, he's still fucking doing it. And that pisses me off. Which, I'm sure Raph's like, I mean, can you really... I mean, I know there's some people who are probably going to be like, are you being mad about it? Is that going to change anything? That's what my dad likes to say. And I'm like, well, no. But I feel better when I get it out of my system. I feel a little better. And when people are like, you know what, Britton, you're on to something, I feel better. Maybe Raph will have a different view on this than I do. But
sorry, I was kind of sidetracked by going through the chat, and I think I felt the situation for me from the sidelines was hard to watch because there was one person who has a lot of personal trauma and was clearly hurt by whatever went down in one way or another, but there is no way for her to actually work through that trauma without going public, and that kind of brings everyone up against you. Some people for good reasons, some people for bad faith reasons. There were a lot of people that have sort of crept into bookish spaces recently that are absolutely bad faith actors that will just jump on everything immediately. And you could see that at the time. And that is part of what makes the whole situation so frustrating, because harm has been done, whether that was on purpose or because a lot of people are just stupid and did dumb shit and have all kinds of personal problems that they brought into that situation. But because it all happened sort of on the internet, everyone was on the sidelines and could jump in and put their own thing in there. And that's the thing that hurts me so much, that made it so painful for me to watch, is there's no good way out of that in any way, shape, or form. And beyond any legal things, Naomi definitely has a lot of fucking trauma to deal with, and that will not go away.
Yeah, she clearly has issues, which I did hear she went to a mental facility, which good. I think that's a good thing because she clearly needs help.
And that's part of this. I earlier this year I read a really good book. I read several good books. One is obviously
one of the really good books you read.
Now, when it comes to especially comes to sexual violence and how society deals with it, there is that the memoir by Chanel Miller that I highly recommend reading to anyone. It's really good. It's gonna really make you very angry.
Is that the one about the? Oh God, is that the one about the guy who got caught and they caught him to they caught him in the act and they had
that's the one.
Bullshit, and he got let go. The
swimmer guy at I keep forgetting the university, but yeah, Brock Turner, the swimmer guy who assaulted her, and he was caught, and it's mostly about her talking about it because obviously it was called she was named Jane Doe in the situation. And
that's right. I did think about picking up that, but I saw an interview with her and it was really sad. It's a really good book. It was her reading her impact statement, and it was fucking brutal.
Yeah, it's Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I highly recommend reading that. Another one that I read earlier this year around that time is On the Wrong Side by, oh God, I need to look up her name. It's a complicated Nicole Bedera, however. It's about how the US university system deals with Title IX and how that how it does systematically hurt victims and protect perpetrators of sexual violence in all kinds of ways. It's she's an anthropologist who did embedded study at one U.S. university where she had interviews and looked at all the Title IX proceedings during the time, and how sexual violence is still very much, how victims are still very much like sidelined, and in order to keep sort of like the reputation, keep the donors going for a university, and how there is a systemic form of how the systemic sexism that we still have in the system is making it so fucking hard to deal with that, and that those kind of things I feel are important to read, because you need to be aware of that larger context to sort of situate something like the events with Danielle Green or whatever in that larger context, and look at like how people then found it so easy to jump on her in ways that were far more vicious than anything that happened to Daniel in the first like 24 hours before, stuff
Oh,
kind
you
of
mean
unraveled.
Daniel Green, medical
Yeah.
professional? It's good. It's a good time. I mean, the worst Daniel got was like medical professional memes. And also the usual kind of, you're a scumbag, fuck you, that stuff. Which kind of goes back to what Helena was saying earlier. I'm not really a fan of trial by social media. I just find that's a really bad way. Like, that's just mob rule at that point. That's not really a good way to figure out the truth. I'll have to add that book because, again, I listened to that lady's victim impact statement, and it was really fucking sad. Like, it was not good.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all bad. Life sucks. What can you do? Be like me. Be a monk. Live on a lonely mountain. Brew your own beer. Well, in my case, brew your own mead, and seek out deeper enlightenment.
Exactly, Zach. Like, if Black Mirror has taught me anything, it's mob rule is a terrible idea, or not mob rule. Mob justice is a terrible idea, and generally turns people into vicious beasts, if you will. Which is kind of disturbing because it's really easy to fall into that.
Yeah. I think like the problem with like mob justice is usually that things like mob justice happen in situations where people feel that there is no other way to get justice. Like, if you read someone, if you read like The Wretched of the Earth, for example, right, which you should at some point read The Wretched of the Earth, or read A Dying Colonialism. It's the kind of stuff you need to read at some point. And one important you don't have to agree with everything in those books, just to be clear, right? My point is what it does, and that is, there's like an important point in there, which is that if the only thing that people know, the only thing that people experience is violence, then they will also decide that the only way they have to change the situation will be violence. And that's something you need to understand. That's where a lot of like mob justice and mob violence comes from, is when people feel helpless and feel that the only way, when all the supposed avenues of change are basically shut off and feel like they're not working, that's when people decide to use the ones they experience and suspect to work. And that's like, no matter what else you believe about, The Wretched of the Earth, which once again you should read. Like that understanding, and I feel in a lot of cases like mob justice is an expression of that, where like everyone kind of knows that the way the legal system deals with things like sexual harassment and violence is very much not doing the right thing. Like, if you've ever met someone who has, if you know someone who has experienced sexual violence and has tried to go the legal way, chances are they did not actually get any form of justice, much less, closure or anything of the sorts, right? Everyone kind of knows that, which is why people are jumping on that and are trying to do like public courts of public opinion and so forth. And that obviously doesn't work, because none of us is qualified to do that, but it shows that there is a lack of like adequate like ways of dealing with it. That's something I think we should like look at and understand, or like try to find ways to make things more, make it easier for people to actually get justice, satisfaction, or enclosure in a more ordered and professional way. Because if that exists, then all the other stuff will definitely fall away in one way or another.
Yeah, just again, it's just a mess. I don't know. It's just I'll have to read that book. I have it on my want to read list. I don't know when I. It's just kind of yeah. No, it's not like I spend every waking moment of my life thinking about what Daniel Green is up to. It's just something that's been on my mind since I really got that kind of full context on what happened, which is a thing.
Well, Zach, the thing is, we are not qualified to judge, but judging is what we do as humans all the time. Right? Like, you see something, you judge. That's what we do.
Yeah,
The
that
point is
kind
like,
of
like
well,
everything you watch, you make a judgment whether you like it. Like, you decide whether you agree, you disagree. That's a judgment. You always do that. The question is like what you do with that judgment, whether you then project that judgment outwards, whether you put it out on a platform and so forth. And that is probably something we should not always do, because our opinion doesn't necessarily count, but we will still judge. And it's important to understand that and be aware of the fact that that's a reflex. That is that is outside, the same thing as belief. That is outside of like your intellectual and rational control. You cannot go like, I will not judge, because unlike an emotional level, you will still feel one way or another. And it's bad.
yeah, it's. I mean, I'm reading I'm reading a book about a serial killer hitchhiker, so that's always fun. It's called Killer on the Road. It's a good book. I'm enjoying it anyway. Yeah, no, yeah, it's just kind of, we're just in a 2025. I'll just say it this way: it's been a year of highs and lows.
Mm.
Which I know you'll probably be like, "Wow, Britton, that's a real profound statement there." Isn't that every day of every year? But it
I'm
feels
just
like
like
2025 is just like more intense than usual.
it's a bad year. It's a bad world.
Yeah, it's been a good reading year though. That's a good part. So that's been good.
Yeah, Ben. That sounds both like really good to read, but also really painful to read.
Yeah, I'm not real fond of dealing with Donald Trump for the second time, but we'll see where that goes. Hopefully we won't blow ourselves up. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, 2025 has been a fucked up year all round, and I doubt it's going to get any better.
Yeah,
I have, like, as someone living in Germany, I do have other things that I don't like about Germany than Merkel and Weimar Republic. I do think the Weimar Republic is a good thing. If you point those two things out, though, Zach, what is your opinion on what came after the Weimar Republic? Because that is the kind of thing where I would certainly have a very radical disagreement with you, to put it mildly.
yeah. I've thought about going. I would love to visit England at some point. I mean, I've heard it's really cold and rainy over there, but I've always wanted to go because it's like so much history in England, you know?
No. What you mean is you have like history that has been written down and is part of your specific historic context. Because
He means Oso. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know what he means about Weimar Republic. Yeah, I think most people who aren't like literal Nazis will agree that like the Nazi regime was a bad idea for everyone involved.
Yeah, not the best of times for anyone. Well, for most people.
Well, I'm reading Jared Henderson's new article because I'm not like paying subscriber, but I am subscribed to his newsletter, and he's talking about the anti-recommendations. Apparently, he did not like Pillars of the Earth, which I know is kind of a and John Scalzi, and also 12 Rules for Life. So I guess he doesn't like those books. Which, you know, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, like climate change is not all bad if you live in fucking Britain. That's true. Not that, like, Germany is that much better. We have lots of rain and fog and shit.
Then again, it's been raining out here as well, so that's not been. I don't really like rain. I think he's talking about another Zach. I don't know. I'm also a little confused now. Is Oso's real name Zach?
No. I was like, one of you said that you like everything about Germany except Merkel and Weimar Republic. Or was that Guardian Skyrim?
That was Guard Skyrim.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was Guard. Sorry, that was Guard. Sorry, then I don't mean you. I mean Guard. Sorry, Zach. I got confused there.
But yeah, we're at like 3 hours, so I'm probably I might get off after a little bit. I'm probably gonna wind it down a little bit. Maybe not this instant, but I would like to wind it down though, because I have other things I'm hoping to do this day.
Sorry. Yeah, let's maybe it is yeah, it's 11:30 here. So probably time to slowly pack it in for me as well. Al Zabo soup. The Al Zabo is such like beyond anything else. Book of the New Sun. The Al Zabo is just like such a creepy, cool monster.
I see why China Mieville liked it probably.
The Al
I know he
Zabo
loves weird monsters. I'm
I don't know.
tempted, Zach, but I have other things I'm doing today. Maybe in the evening we can start it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, the Al Zabo is like this weird monster that eats people and then for a while can imitate their voices and takes on some of the personality of the person that it has eaten.
Oh, that's
and
creepy.
That can make for some really creepy shit.
Oh, that does sound really creepy.
Yeah. So yeah, you can see why China Mieville loves it, but yeah, it's genuinely like a really creepy monster.
Well, I mean, China Mieville's the guy who made up slake moths and those
yeah.
And he also made the weird mosquito people and the scar.
Yeah.
Also, I heard there's sentient umbrellas in one of his books. I think it's Unlondon.
Unlondon, yes. The I haven't read that one.
I want to read. Like I said, I'm going to be reading a lot of standalones, fantasy next year. So I'm hoping maybe I'll get to some of Mieville's other books, like Railsea and Unlondon.
Aaron, I can probably agree with you there. 1871 was certainly when shit started going downhill.
I'm surprised you don't like. I'm surprised you don't like Bismarck, Aaron. He's pretty influential, though.
But influential is not the same thing as good.
Yeah, that's true. His life story is really fascinating because he was just a dude who freaking liked to. He was kind of crazy back in the day. He's kind of like the German Theodore Roosevelt, actually. That's the one I compare him to, because his life story is so crazy and so ridiculous. Like, you're just like, this could not have happened anywhere else. But in reality,
I think he was probably much smarter and more like when it comes to strategic thinking. Bismarck was definitely a far better politician than Roosevelt. Theodore
no, I
Roosevelt
mean,
was
sure,
yeah,
but
yeah.
no, I'm just
And
saying that.
Roosevelt and Bismarck really hated Kaiser Wilhelm. Like he was not a fan of the last German Kaiser. I can tell you that.
Yeah, didn't they like butt heads, and then he finally is like, "Get out of here, Bismarck," and he's like,
Yeah,
"No, fuck you."
yeah. We all know what happened after that.
And then World
Like,
War One started and ruined everything.
I hate to hand it to Bismarck, but yeah.
No, I mean, I just compared him to Theodore Roosevelt because like he has a very wild life story. Kind of like, I don't know if they're like the same type of politician. I'd say I would agree. I think Bismarck is more of would be a better politician. He was one of those guys who was really interested in what worked.
And he really hated the Catholic Church.
Yeah, he didn't like Catholics.
Which kind of, brings us back to where we all started with fucking Philip Pullman. Philip Pullman and Bismarck, both bad.
Well, I don't think Phil Pullman's bad. I'm sure he's a good guy. I'm sure he's fine, but he's just kind of like
Philip Pullman and Bismarck both hate the Catholic Church and Kaiser Wilhelm.
I don't know if he. I don't know about that, but no, it's kind of funny. We've come full circle to the Catholic bashing. You know who else didn't like the Catholics? John Milton. John Milton didn't like Catholics.
Yeah, but Milton at least was a really good writer.
That's true, yeah. So I guess him and Pullman have that in common. They both freaking did like Catholics.
I wouldn't know about Pullman. I have read Milton, but I haven't read Pullman.
That's true. Yeah, Bismarck kind of screwed himself when he was like, I'm going to make this great system, but I can't imagine a world where I'm not in it. That's really where he went wrong. And
yeah,
after that, it went to hell pretty quickly.
yeah. German history, not a fun subject.
You guys have a... Yeah, I know. Germany's been taking that L ever since Bismarck died. Or I should say after he was removed from office.
I mean, to be fair, Germany as a nation has always sucked. Yes, we won that war in 1871, but beyond that, Germany as a nation state has always been bad. Just like all nation states, which are a bad idea. But, what do I know?
And then Hitler showed up, and it just went to hell. It went to the other stratosphere. Went to the other. I forget what's the worst version of hell in Dante's Inferno? Can't remember.
Down at the end, it's where the traitors are, and it's frozen over. It's
Oh yeah, that's when I say when Hitler
Judas,
showed up. That's when hell froze over.
It's Judas Iscariot and Lucifer and what's his face, Brutus and Cassius are down there freezing their asses off.
That does not sound fun. Nietzsche agrees. Oh, so yeah, Nietzsche had some weird ideas about politics. He was all like, "Okay, guys, there are just some people, they're just better than others, and we shouldn't be held back because some book long time ago told us that we should hold back." And I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. He's also
Nietzsche
like morality, kind of a sham, and it's like, what? Which I know that's not. I'm being simple here. I know that's not. I know it's a little more complicated than that, but it's kind of like
Nietzsche is very, very complicated for all kinds of reasons. Partly when you look at like the stuff that he published, plus the stuff that was published and changed afterwards by his sister. There's so much stuff. Nietzsche is the danger with Nietzsche is that he is so incredibly readable because he's like a really good writer, and that means a lot of people have read Nietzsche and just taken whatever they want from Nietzsche and go from there, and that can be problematic. But like, the whole like God is dead part is like one of those fascinating people. It's like Nietzsche is not saying. I mean, Nietzsche's point is not like I hate God. Nietzsche's point is like, looking at the world that we live in right now, the way we're doing science and all of that stuff, no one is believing in like God in the way that we did before, say, the Enlightenment, and we need to figure out what to do now. And that's a very different thing from like Nietzsche hates God, which he still may, but that's not his point at that point in
I don't think
that
he
text.
hates God. I think he's actually kind of worried at the idea that
Oh
God,
yeah, definitely.
and
yeah,
you're
but,
right. Like his whole thesis is basically, okay, what do we do now?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Nietzsche definitely hated Germany, and who can, like, I mean, I can't disagree with him on that one. He may have had a point. Anyway, let's not start a discussion on Nietzsche on Nietzsche's philosophy today.
That's
We can
for
still do that another
social
time.
club.
Yeah. But yeah, let's. I'm slowly leaving here because it's late for me.
Yes, I am probably going to take off
All
soon
right.
myself. I've gotten all my rants out of my system.
That is good. That is good.
Nietzsche was probably a nightmare to be friends with. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, no, he's.
Yeah, definitely.
He sounds like he was kind of a pain in the ass to deal with.
Well, and he also had like syphilis and severe mental health struggles.
That's
so
true. Yeah,
that certainly didn't help.
it's probably apocryphal, but like apparently he saw a horse getting beaten and he lost his mind after that.
He didn't lose his mind after that. But the scene with the horse, I think, the point is like he saw the horse getting being beaten, and he started crying and went to hug the horse and so forth. And so he was definitely someone who was emotionally severely impacted by any form of cruelty and violence, and that is something you can see in there certainly. And yeah,
Like I
as
said,
someone,
it's apocryphal. I don't know if it's true, but
I mean, I think there's the horse. The scene with the horse is not just apocryphal. I think there is enough evidence that happened, but it certainly wasn't the trigger for his mental health breakdown. It just happened around the time where other stuff also came to a head, I guess. But yeah, look, beating horses is wrong, and I'm saying that as someone who has known horses, and some of them can be really stupid and stubborn. But you should still not, actually beat horses. That's animal cruelty is bad.
Yeah, don't do that. There's better things to do with your time.
Yeah. But yeah. All right, Britton. Moving out.
All right. Well, you do that thing.
It's been fun.
Probably gonna take off myself, but
Right.
yeah. You take care, Raph.
All right. See you guys around.
All right. Well, I am going to probably head off myself. Thank you, everyone who showed up and dealing with my ranty ass. I have a lot of things I'm going to be doing this week, so you're probably going to see a lot of content from me coming up. So, yeah, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Well, until the next time we have this. So, take care, everyone. Let me sit. Oh, wait, what? No. Stay. In stream. Sorry, I always get those mixed up. And stand here.